Let's dive in. I'm Luchin Wu, and I got a wild respawn after my late night mount and blade run ended right before total victory. My poor heart just stopped when my eyes finally opened. Totally not human. I was magically reborn as a tiny goblin baby somewhere. And my new goblin tribe, absolutely repulsive. Just hundreds of these ugly, pint-sized monsters, barely half a human's height, running around a place that straight up looked and smelled like a massive garbage dump. Our chief was the biggest guy, almost human-sized, but crazy overweight. This guy always ate first. He'd instantly devour whatever catch the hunters dragged in, totally stuff his face, and waddle to his hut for naps. Only after he was completely out cold could the entire tribe brawl for those scraps. Once the greedy adults finished eating, nearly nothing remained except bare bones. That is exactly when us tiny babies would crawl from hiding just to lick muddy pig juices, right? Off the filthy ground. That was our entire meal. Nobody cared at all. Adults tossed kids aside like garbage. Zero food, zero protection, and if those hunters ever returned empty-handed, they would actually turn us poor babies into their next snack. So, yeah, goblins have zero family loyalty. I knew I could only rely on myself. Thankfully, I still had one major advantage. Mount and Blade, the exact game that ended my run, actually followed me here as a system. It instantly gifted me 3 free attribute points. I dumped every single point into vitality without blinking. That alone kept me going through the absolute worst. For 14 straight days, I survived on grass. Just plain grass. My body grew super fast though. Goblins mature insanely quickly. By day 14, I could easily stand and walk. Today, I watched the whole tribe completely devour a wild boar until just a bare skeleton remained. I stared at those bones and got a genius idea. I grabbed a rock, knocked out 4 sharp tusks, and suddenly noticed those thick leg bones. Sweet marrow, rich food hidden inside. I quickly dragged one massive leg, bone deep into the forest, far from everyone. I couldn't let the adults catch me making fire. They'd definitely attack me, or realize bones held hidden food, and then I'd never get a single bite. I ran until finding a tiny valley where the wind blew away from camp. Honestly, I was so incredibly hungry, I almost passed out right there. I actually had to stop and chew grass multiple times just to keep moving, but I succeeded. I gathered up dry branches and leaves, built a little fire pit, and crafted a bow drill using a stick, a board, bark fiber, and stolen rope. The second I finished that fire starter, the system suddenly pinged inside my head. Smithing proficiency, 1. Even a super tiny achievement like that counted. I checked my skill tree and spotted something amazing. At higher levels, I could totally unlock smelting and weapon enchanting. The system perfectly adapted to this world. Now pay attention, guys. If crafting worked, maybe recruiting soldiers would too. That was the ultimate game changer for me to build my own epic empire here. I sparked the fire and roasted that leg bone until it crackled beautifully. That heavenly smell of cooking protein literally drove my senses totally insane. After 2 miserable weeks eating plain grass, my entire body desperately screamed for real food. While waiting, I ground down those 4 tusks with a rock, split a wooden stick's end, jammed a sharp tusk inside, and tied it extremely tight with rope. A crude spear. The system chimed again. You forged a shabby spear. Smithing proficiency 1. It totally looked like it might snap anytime. But hey, better than nothing. Finally, the bone was ready. I lifted it up high and smashed it against a rock. It cracked perfectly in the middle and rich marrow spilled out. I lunged forward and greedily sucked that delicious marrow straight from the broken bone. Pure fat and nutrients instantly flooded my stomach. I nearly rolled my eyes back from sheer joy. I'm a meat eater, I cheered. 2 weeks of grass. All that suffering healed in one glorious moment of rich animal fat. I cleaned out the first half and grabbed for the second piece. Then I heard a sudden twig snapping. I quickly looked up. You see this coming, right? 8 goblins creeping closer, their green eyes glowing with hunger. Totally locked onto my precious bone. Hand it over, grass eater, it smells amazing. The absolute biggest bully confidently stepped right forward. Almost a full-grown monster, about 0.8 meters tall, the absolute strongest there. They called me Grass Eater because they watched me chew leaves every day. That is how goblins name each other. Others got called Dirt Eater, or worse. Such a creative bunch. 8 against 1. I held my crappy spear, but that wasn't much of an advantage here. Running wasn't an option either. They'd quickly catch me, but surrendering my bone and returning to eating grass? Absolutely no way. So, I chose pure violence. Sure, brothers, let's share. I casually tossed the leg bone right in front of them with a massive smile. The exact second it hit the dirt, and some roasted marrow spilled out. They entirely lost their minds. All 8 instantly dove for it like wild animals, violently shoving and aggressively clawing each other. That was my perfect opening. I grabbed a rock in my left hand, spear in my right, and boldly charged. I hurled the rock straight at the back of one goblin's skull. He dropped with a loud scream. Before others could react, I slammed my crude spear right into another one's stomach. He collapsed, loudly howling. I yanked my spear out and struck a third. Then I kicked a slow guy down, stomped his back, and eliminated him too. 4 down in seconds. Honestly, do you guys think I can actually survive this crazy world? Let's dive right into this wild story. If I hadn't eaten that marrow earlier, I would have collapsed entirely. The remaining 4 just stared at me, completely terrified. I had just dropped half their entire group. Goblin instinct meant respecting power, but their starvation won. They slowly crept toward the bone again, picking up sticks and sharp rocks this time. Fully armed, I considered backing away when 3 distinct system notifications chimed right in my head. You defeated a goblin infant. Experience 1. Defeated a goblin infant. Experience 1. Defeated a goblin infant. Experience 1. 3 of the 4 I had taken down were totally gone. I opened my character panel. My experience jumped from 0 to 3 out of 7. I just needed 7 to level up, and 4 goblins were standing right there. That meant exactly 4 more experience points. More than enough to win. I checked my stats. My Grass Eater title let my stomach digest literally anything, but it dropped my charisma by 10 whole points with the other goblin creatures. My polearm proficiency leveled up to 2 after striking those 3 guys down. Scouting proficiency hit 11 from weeks of constant watching, and running proficiency sat at 18 from all that desperate, wild sprinting away from danger. In Mountain Blade, leveling up grants you attribute points and skill points. Attribute points obviously make you stronger. Higher vitality means way more stamina, while skill points let you completely specialize. Every single stat mattered because who knows what wild dangers awaited here. Now, pay attention, here is where it gets crazy. I looked at those 4 goblins and just smiled. 4 goblins meant 4 points and a level up. They were already finished. They just didn't realize it. Dear Goblin brothers, we don't need to fight each other. Let's just shake hands and make peace. We are family. I said all that while aiming my spear right at them. Nobody bought it. The tallest guy yelled, "Rush him together and get him." We split the food. He grabbed a heavy rock and a wooden stick, copying exactly what I had done just a few minutes ago. Goblins learn super fast, I will admit that, but they are still monsters. They cannot outsmart a human soul. I pointed right behind them with a terrified look and screamed, "The chief is here." Every single one of them instantly spun around in total panic. The chief was their absolute worst nightmare. If the hunters failed, he would just grab the baby goblins for lunch. We were basically his emergency food supply. The big guy turned back and finally realized my trick, but it was too late. I was already flying right at him. My spear punched straight into his stomach. He screamed out, grabbing the spear shaft with both hands and refusing to let go. The other 3 finally snapped out of it, hurling heavy rocks. I quickly ducked to protect my head, but still took brutal hits everywhere, causing massive bruises. I cursed loudly, gave up, pulling the spear out, and shoved it deeper instead, slamming him down. I twisted it, stomped his chest, and yanked it free. I boldly raised the spear to charge those last 3 guys, but the tip was completely gone. I know what you are thinking, game over, right? The boar tusk snapped off entirely. I held a bare stick, and those 3 goblins got brave. They charged at me with clubs. I backpedaled super fast and started talking again. Dear family, why are we fighting? Look at all this tasty food right on the ground. Plenty for everyone here. Why risk yourselves attacking me? 2 of them actually stopped moving. That made perfect sense to them, but the 3rd guy had 0 brakes. He charged straight forward, aggressively swinging his wooden club. I waited until he was super close, then kicked blinding dirt into his eyes. While he clawed his face, I smashed the broken pole onto his head. It struck his head with a sickening crunch. He instantly went stiff and dropped totally flat. The pole just snapped in half. Defeated a goblin infant. Experience 1. That final swing literally took everything inside me. My vision went completely white and I collapsed. I seriously thought it was over, just waiting to fail. 10 seconds, 20, 3 minutes, 10 minutes passed. Nothing. I slowly sat up and looked around. Those last 2 cowards had run away. If they had all rushed me together earlier, I would be totally finished. But they had 0 teamwork skills. I picked them apart one by one using clever tricks, and they just charged me like complete idiots. Still, I could not let them return to the tribe. If they mentioned I could make fire, the chief definitely wouldn't just promote me. He would eat me. He probably figured consuming a smart goblin would make him smarter. I snatched up the remaining bone, sucked out the marrow, and sprinted after them with a newly sharpened boar tusk right in my hand. I honestly wasn't worried about them getting far. They were just as starved as I was. After sprinting away so panicked, they would pass out from low energy within minutes. Less than 500 meters out, I found both twitching on the ground, eyes rolled back. They couldn't even stand up. I finished them both. 3 more experience notifications instantly rang in my head. I dumped my new attribute point into vitality right away, pushing it from 3 to 4. Trust me, you and I just witnessed an epic comeback. Dizziness gone. I grew to 0.9 meters, perfectly matching an adult goblin. Stick with me. We are about to see him pick speed over pure pole arm strength. Surviving today was not about raw power. It was all footwork and clever taunts. Being super weak meant investing in pure survival made total sense. His steps immediately felt way lighter. He whistled, heading back to the field. Then, boom, victory screen. Epic loot drops. Like any game, enemies always drop grain. 2 5-kilogram bags instantly spawned right at his feet. Over a month of food. Those extra items went straight into his magic storage inventory. Perfect spaceless storage. 6 of 30 slots filled. Opening his troop panel, it read 1/20th. His level 1 clan allowed 20 soldiers, plus 1 captive. Recruiting defeated FOs builds a real army. The other way, visiting a village and paying diners. Only problem, the nearest village was goblins. He approached the unconscious goblin he knocked out earlier with a rock. Instead of finishing him off, he tied the little guy up. A quick slap woke him up. Blinking in total confusion, our hero crouched, lifted his bumpy chin, and stared into his yellow eyes. Join my grand army, buddy. Let us make goblins great again. But this fool just kept screaming. He couldn't finish a single sentence. Shouting at him to shut up worked for half a second before the goblin shrieked even louder. Losing all patience, he smacked the goblin's face 8 times until the little monster toppled over dizzy. Grabbing his collar, he glared. I am your boss now. Obey me or I will slap you silly forever. Got it? He nodded crazily, absolutely terrified. He quickly checked his game system. Prisoner panel. Still no recruit option on his icon. That made 0 sense. This was a level 0. Nobody, the weakest unit. Weak captives should be instantly recruitable, plus, he verbally surrendered. Maybe our hero was not applying enough pressure. He punched his face, stomped his chest, and kicked his stomach until the monster threw up acid. Crying and swearing total loyalty to the boss. Checking the panel, still no recruit option. Now watch closely. You and I can see a tiny glint of mischief. The little guy was faking. That was it. He tied a rope securely, tossed it over a branch, and hoisted the goblin up until his feet completely dangled. Playing games with me? Let us fly a kite. He thrashed wildly, eyes wide and face turning colors. He dangled him for over 30 seconds until he got totally dizzy, then dropped him down and did fake CPR to wake him. Ready to submit? Want another round? The goblin scrambled backward, frantically pushing away with his legs. Only pure terror in his eyes. Zero mischief left. I am your boss now. Obey, or get smacked every single day. He barely understood words, but totally understood pain. He nodded so fast his head almost spun off. Opening the panel again, the glorious recruit button finally appeared. He truly submitted from his heart. Hitting recruit cost 5 diners, leaving 18. Then a new line appeared. Troop maintenance required 1 dinner daily. Very worrying. In this system, unpaid soldiers quickly lose their morale. When morale hits 20, they desert. His troop morale sat at 60. Not great. To fix it, he must pay wages and stock varied food. Right now, he only had grain. He untied his hands and looked closely. The sneakiness completely vanished from his eyes. You see that too, right? Pure loyalty, like the system flipped a switch. Time to test him. Sit. He rolled on the dirt. Slap yourself twice. Hesitating slightly, he smacked both his own cheeks. Build a nuclear reactor. The goblin stared blankly. So he only follows orders he physically understands. Anything too complex, got a confused look. This was not regular recruiting. This meant making loyal soldiers fighting fiercely without question. The panel showed 1/20th. He could have 20 soldiers. Filling every single slot meant 19 loyal fighters following his absolute every command. Even if these goblins only had a child's strength, he could achieve huge things with numbers like that. Experience upgrades them into stronger variants. He named him Goblin Spear, handing over a tusk and stick. Watch me closely and copy this. He grabbed a perfectly straight wooden pole, wedging the tusk into the split end. He scraped sticky tree resin from massive claw marks left on a nearby tree trunk. Smearing resin thickly over the joint, he held it over the campfire. The resin hardened quickly into a super solid dark bond. Wiggling the tusk, it held totally firm, primitive and ugly, but way better than that flimsy grass rope version breaking mid-battle. The goblin completely copied everything, and trust me, you and I are gonna be amazed. Let's dive into this wild new world together. I remembered past life fantasy stories about average goblins. Alone, total pushovers. Any guy could defeat one, but when they group up, everything suddenly shifts. Smarter, tougher ones rise up as leaders. If a tribe isn't entirely wiped out, they actually evolve. Zero fire at first, then wooden gear, stone tools, iron swords, and eventually even crazy magical weapons. Seeing Goblin Spear joyfully twirl, his brand new weapon, I realized these little guys hide way more potential than anyone expects. Still morning, and heading home meant a lovely grass buffet. No, thanks. I chose to keep adventuring onward. I recalled spying on the hunting parties these past 2 weeks. The groups returning from the north always brought back fish. That guaranteed a massive river nearby. Plus, catching fish sounded way easier than chasing speedy forest animals. I told Goblin Spear to tag along, and we headed north. Roughly 7 or 8 kilometers later, my jaw completely dropped. This river was gigantic. I could barely even see the opposite bank. Now watch closely here. It was over 5 kilometers wide. Suddenly, an absolutely colossal beast exploded from the deep water, crashing back down like a massive, epic bomb. The tidal wave was pure madness. That monster easily stretched over 100 meters. I yanked Goblin Spear away from the edge. No way I was becoming some sea monster's afternoon snack. But hey, I wasn't quitting yet. We followed the shore and finally discovered a tiny side stream. Crystal clear water, completely packed with little fish zipping everywhere. Goblin Spear lost his mind with excitement. He literally belly flopped in, trying to grab the fish with his bare hands. I just sighed. If it were that simple, our tribe wouldn't be fighting for scraps. He splashed like crazy, but grabbed absolutely zero. But climbing out, he noticed some random snails crawling on the muddy bank, and happily tossed one into his mouth. I smacked him so hard he did 3 full spins. I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him wildly. Are you trying to get eliminated? Those nasty things are packed with awful parasites. They will ruin you. I saw it happen back home. Adult goblins would randomly clutch their screaming stomachs and vanish days later. Some even went totally crazy, smashing trees in endless agony until the very end. All caused by eating gross raw food. Tiny bugs invading their guts, livers, and brains. Goblin Spear gave me the saddest kicked puppy eyes. I simply declared, absolutely no snacking without my official permission. I marched him into the woods for straight sticks and vines. Once he brought back a massive pile, taught him the ancient art of weaving fish traps. He mirrored my moves flawlessly, crafting his own trap. Seriously, a goblin's learning speed is absolutely mind-blowing. I quickly crushed a few unlucky snails, shoved the meat inside for bait, anchored the ropes to sturdy sticks, and chucked them right into the water. Then, the waiting game began. Both our bellies were loudly rumbling. Goblin Spear looked super dizzy, completely starving all day long. So, I magically pulled a sweet bag of grain from my awesome inventory and offered him a giant fistful. Chow down. He stared wide-eyed at my palm, totally stunned by my magic trick. He greedily shoved it in, but instantly, his entire face scrunched up like he just chewed a lemon. Raw, unshelled wheat is super tough and totally flavorless. He nearly gagged. I raised my hand in warning. Spit that out and I will literally slap you into next Tuesday. He gulped it down with dramatic tears forming. I tossed him 2 more handfuls. He painfully chewed them, looking absolutely devastated the entire time. He completely missed that the grain fully restored his energy. I munched some too. Honestly, my weird grass eater title made it surprisingly tasty. I could actually taste the faint sweetness. But deep down, my modern human palate still demanded much better. We both know I desperately need a flour mill. Soon. Anyway, we spent the next hour cheerfully weaving over a dozen more traps. My crafting proficiency hit level 8. Reaching 25 would unlock my first epic subskill. Checking our first traps, Goblin Spear hoisted them up and absolutely lost his mind. Fish. 2 massive ones, plus 4 or 5 little finger-sized guys wiggling around. He bear-hugged a giant fish, jaws opened wide. Then he remembered my strict rule, gently placing it down. My slapping hand was already raised, but I calmly lowered it. Nice. That system, enforced obedience, was working perfectly. He successfully fought his wild goblin instincts. I demonstrated scaling and prepping the catch using a sharp tusk. Then we roasted the big ones over a cozy campfire. The aroma was downright heavenly. Goblin Spear stared at me, heavily drooling with massive, begging eyes. I secured the 5 kilograms of roasted fish onto a vine, storing them neatly. My epic inventory now boasted 2 glorious food categories: plain grain and delicious roasted fish. Troop morale ticked up to 61. I tossed the sharp tusk to my goblin buddy and pointed straight at the smaller fish. You watched my technique. Prep those up, and half for yours. He was absolutely glowing. While he worked, I stuffed the leftovers into fresh traps and launched them riverbound. Those raw pieces worked like a charm, driving the river fish totally crazy. Every 10 minutes, another trap surfaced with the guaranteed catch inside. We literally could not stop grinning happily. With him around, my inventory expanded from 30 to 40 slots. 10 filled, 15, 20. But trust me, you and I are about to see what we entirely forgot. Stick with me. Fishbait brings out epic monsters. Goblin Spear went to check our trap. Suddenly, the water just blew up. A giant beast burst through, chomped the trap completely in half, and vanished right back underwater. Goblin Spear tumbled straight back onto the dirt. I whipped around, absolutely frozen in pure shock. The entire river was swarming with them. 3-meter-long monsters that looked like giant crocodiles rocking 2 massive horns. Glowing red eyes everywhere. They were totally shredding our traps into toothpicks. Those insane jaws could easily turn a goblin to absolute mush. My system tagged them as enemies, meaning I could easily farm experience points by taking them down. I stared at my flimsy stick, then at their super thick armor. Yeah, Absolutely no chance. I dashed over, snatched the paralyzed goblin spear, and bolted for the woods like my future depended on it, because it really did. Those four-horned crocodiles wrecked our traps in seconds, then locked their bright red eyes right on us. Their massive bodies actually started dragging up the bank. Goblin's spear was totally paralyzed. I hauled him back, gave him 2 quick smacks to wake him up, and he bolted screaming into the trees. But I stayed right there. I noticed something huge. These beasts were super slow ashore. Their heavy armor was way too much for those tiny legs. They basically wiggled forward. I strolled backward, keeping 10 meters between us, just testing exactly how far they would chase. They dragged on for 100 meters before totally giving up and turning around. 100 meters. I locked that number in my brain for later. Surprisingly, Goblin's spear actually came back to find me, fighting his own goblin survival instincts just to check on his buddy. Watch closely. Things get interesting here. The loyalty system worked wonders. Seeing me easily stroll away from those giant reptiles left him absolutely speechless. Before heading home to the tribe, I made us take a quick detour to a muddy ditch. We scrubbed ourselves down and rubbed crushed grass juice everywhere to completely hide that super strong fishy scent. Walking into a starving camp smelling like fresh seafood would end badly. We stashed our spears in some bushes outside the tribe and sneakily crawled back through the tall grass. Something was instantly wrong. Goblins were rolling all over the dirt, grabbing their tummies and crying out loudly. Some were totally foaming at the mouth, knocked out or getting super close. Definitely massive food poisoning. I spotted a tiny baby goblin chilling in the grass, watching this mess like a movie. I tapped his back. "Hey, little guy, what went down? Did everyone eat bad mushrooms?" He just hissed at me fiercely. 3 quick taps later, and his attitude magically improved. "The hunting squad found some strange red fruit," he told me. "They brought it home, and everyone who took a bite ended up like this." I watched the entire camp tumbling around. That snack was seriously bad news. Could be super useful later though. I needed their secret spot. But first, I looked at this little guy and smiled warmly. "Kid, I see huge potential in you. Join my squad. I will be your boss and keep you totally full." Ding. Spend 5 diners to recruit 1 tiny goblin. He nodded immediately, and I officially named him Fodder. "Remember your cool new name. Mess up and you get a timeout. Now let us go." Our new trio easily found an older goblin still yelling, with decent energy left. He probably munched way less of that toxic fruit than everyone. We grabbed his arms and legs, pulling him straight into the bushes. The others definitely saw us, but totally ignored it. I know what you're thinking, but they just assumed 3 starving kids wanted a snack. Others tried that and got sick too. Not a single one warned us. They just wanted to watch us struggle. I leaned over the groaning guy. "Where did you find those wild berries?" "Ah, my tummy hurts so much." Yeah, he was completely useless. I could not hear anything over his constant yelling. Normally, I would shake him awake, but he was barely holding on. Picking on a sick guy felt wrong, so I switched up the strategy. "Call me boss and I will cure your tummy ache." Ding. Spend 10 diners to recruit 1 adult goblin. He agreed instantly, without hesitation. He would do absolutely anything for relief. I paid 10 diners and we dragged him to a tiny waterfall where the tribe gets their water. Open wide and chug until you are totally bursting. He followed orders perfectly. His tummy swelled like a giant balloon. Then I grabbed a soft root from the muddy bank, popped his jaw wide open, and pushed it in. He instantly threw up everything. I made him gulp more water, throw up, drink, throw up. 3 whole rounds. Finally, he went totally limp and just passed out completely. Goblin spear tapped me. "Boss, I think you broke him." I flicked his head. He whimpered and rubbed his cheek. The guy was definitely not gone, just completely drained from toxic fruit and my wild stomach pumping. Normally, a dude in this bad shape would never make it. That nasty stuff wrecked his insides, but I possess the ultimate game system. That's where we leave it. On my screen, he just reads severely wounded. Injured characters only ever had 2 modes. Stick with me, Our guy just found the best system glitch. Rest in town, and boom, instant automatic healing. Basically, one good snooze equals full HP. Bright and early the next morning, he checks on our little poisoned goblin friend. The stats showed him completely cured. In reality, the little guy was bouncing off walls, totally full of energy. But those 30 other goblins who snacked on those exact same red fruits, yeah, they were completely wiped out. Every single one of them. So, I named him Goblin Big. Show me where those berries are. At first light, our squad of 4 quietly slipped out of camp. I snatched our hidden spears from the bushes and let Goblin Big lead the way west. En route, I pulled roasted fish straight from my inventory. Fodder and Big stared, completely amazed by the magic food, but instantly forgot their shock once they started happily munching. New rule, guys, nobody eats without my strict permission. Break it, and you'll get smacked. I absolutely couldn't afford losing any more troops right now. My wallet was totally empty. If we didn't farm some monster loot today, wouldn't pay wages. Morale would hit 0, and they'd totally run away. Even worse, off the system's leash, they might spill my secrets. No way I'm letting that happen. We reached the spot fast. A tiny bush packed with bright, smooth, and shiny berries. Unnaturally red, like strawberries dipped in dark crimson dye. The fact no animals had even taken a bite, that proved they were intensely toxic. I gathered a massive pile, wrapping them up in giant leaves. Then, I led the cheerful squad straight north, back to that river with those huge horned crocodiles. Hey, Goblin Spear, remember those fish traps? Take Fodder and Big with you. Go catch us some fish. He turned pale. But boss, the crocs. I raised my hand dramatically, and he instantly stood at attention. Mission accepted, boss. While they busily worked, I started a fire and happily crafted 2 extra spears using my final boar tusks. By the time I was done, Goblin Spear came sprinting back with a fresh catch. I prepped the fish, stuffed it full of those toxic red berries, and crushed them until the juice soaked everything inside. Next, I happily mashed extra berries into a thick paste, smearing it everywhere. I even coated all 4 of our spear tips for maximum damage. Now pay attention, this is where it gets wild. I handed out spears, grabbed the bait, and said, "Follow me." Spear immediately realized my totally insane plan. He looked totally spooked, but the other 2 were already marching forward, leaving him absolutely zero choice. Down by the river, several giant horned crocs were chilling in the sun. I targeted a loner, sneaking up to a 20-meter distance. It spotted me instantly, red eyes locking on tight. So, I lobbed a rock. The beast exploded forward, jaws snapping wide. Spear screamed in panic and tried to run away. Hold your ground. Form up right now. That command froze him completely. Battle mode was locked in, letting me fully control my troops through system orders. The trio was crying and shaking with fear, yet their bodies stayed planted, spears high. It honestly looked pretty hilarious. But the croc's fierce sprint barely lasted 10 meters before it hilariously slowed down to a sluggish crawl, exactly like yesterday. I kept my squad 10 meters away, slowly retreating. I totally could have handled this solo, but testing the system's control while toughening up my boys was a way better strategy. Once we dragged the giant beast about 100 meters inland, I tossed that special fish right in its path. The cranky croc was seriously losing patience and almost turned back, right until it noticed the free snack waiting. It glanced down, saw a tasty meal, and instantly gulped it whole. Then it just stared at me, wanting seconds. You and I both expected instant chaos, right? But nothing happened. An entire minute passed. Those toxic berries wrecked the goblins instantly. Yet this tough armored tank wasn't reacting at all. I almost called the whole thing off. Maybe reptiles were totally immune? After all, this big guy was a level 3 system unit packing some really serious firepower. Fighting it directly was a terrible idea. But suddenly, it stopped. Just froze mid-step, completely paused. Absolute, eerie stillness. 1 second later, total chaos. Its massive jaws snapped wide with a horrible shriek. It started wildly, thrashing around, tail whipping furiously. head slamming everywhere while clawing the dirt. It spun like a crazy top, clearly hurting really badly. The crazy plan actually worked. Gripping my spear tightly, charged right in, excitedly hunting for a solid opening. But I wasn't acting foolishly. I carefully circled the raging beast, keeping my weapon high and patiently watching its movements. Spotting me, the monster whipped its tail like a massive club. It slammed right into a tree, leaving a ridiculously deep dent. A hit like that would have completely crushed me. But honestly, I wasn't scared. I was totally hyped. Tougher enemies mean way sweeter experience point drops. I kept annoying it, happily tossing rocks and shouting loudly. Giant reptiles stress out fast, and this guy was losing it, snapping those jaws and hissing, until the bellyache finally reached its absolute max limit. You and I just won. The beast ignored me, desperately crawling toward the river. Stick with me here. Hurt wild creatures always flee to familiar ground. Big problem. If it hit the water and left the system combat zone, the fight resets. Even if the venom finished it later, it gets zero loot. I commanded my 3 goblins to sprint ahead, making crazy noise, tossing rocks, doing absolutely anything to slow that beast down. Total failure. The crocodile was hurting way too much to care about tiny green guys screaming at it. I desperately needed another plan. Super fast. I snatched rope from inventory, whipped up a lasso, and tossed it right at the crocodile's head from the side. I completely missed 3 times, widened the loop, studied its exact movements, and threw it again. Finally caught it. The lasso slipped perfectly over its head, snapping tight around its chunky neck while it crawled. I sprinted to a thick tree, wrapped the cord twice, and secured it tight. Then I leaped back to pure safety. The rope was just basic grass cord, basically only as thick as a single finger. Against a healthy beast, it snaps like thread. But this one was fading fast. Watch closely. It lurched forward, yanked the rope tight, and collapsed. The venom completely wrecked its insides. Its jaws dripped red fluid constantly. I spotted that earlier. Moving at all just proved how absurdly tough these crazy monsters really were. 5 minutes passed. Occasional twitches. 10 minutes brought wild convulsions, red foam bursting from its nose. 30 minutes, total silence. It lay there like a fallen log, with only dark bubbles from its nose proving it was still ticking. Time to finish this, but I wasn't risking any sneaky tricks at all. Fodder, go step up onto its massive back. Fodder almost lost it. He refused. I slapped him a few times, still refused. Fine. I opened the mount and blade battlefield command screen, assigned Fodder to an infantry group, and dragged the glowing flag onto the crocodile's back. An invisible magic force pulled him forward, legs moving totally on their own. He walked straight onto the crocodile's back, standing rigid with absolute terror. When his brain realized where his body was, he screamed and completely lost control. But the huge crocodile didn't move. Not one twitch. It was completely finished. I climbed up, stepped on its skull from behind for pure safety, and drove my spear straight through its eye with absolute max power. The sharp tip sank deep. The crocodile shuddered for a long moment, then went completely limp. Epic victory. 30 experience and 90 diners per takedown. I put the attribute point into vitality, hitting 5. My body shot up to 1.3 meters, full adult goblin size. The skill point went into running again, bringing it to level 2 out of 5. The awesome loot was absolutely incredible. This monster meat was magically infused. Eating it regularly would seriously boost my own internal magic power. The crocodile hide was even better. Its back easily deflects sharp swords, while the belly is incredibly soft for sweet armor lining. Way better than heavy steel for crafting magic-resistant armor, too. I just silently stared at the fallen crocodile on the ground. I know what you're thinking. The system gave one hide, but the carcass holds another. Take down one beast, get 2 epic skins. Farming these monsters means building a wildly epic heavy infantry squad. Big problem though, I couldn't even skin the thing. 0 real knives, absolutely no tools. And flipping this massive beast with just 4 guys? Impossible. I desperately needed much bigger, stronger troops. Speaking of which, I eagerly checked my troop management panel. One soldier was ready for an upgrade, spent 5 diners and promoted Goblin Spear. He yelled in pure surprise as his body changed right before our eyes, growing way taller, broader, and visibly stronger. When it finally stopped, he stood at 1.2 meters, gone from an infant to a proper goblin, a solid level 1 unit. The next upgrade, Big Goblin at level 2. Reaching human height with crazy strength way beyond any normal man. Things were finally moving. I'm taller, I'm stronger. Goblin Spear was jumping around, totally thrilled, comparing his awesome new height to Goblin Big. For any goblin, surviving past the baby stage was a total miracle. 80% didn't make it as infants, starved, or got devoured by adults. But once you hit adult size, you at least got some basic rights. No more casual eliminations. Only the boss chief could do that now. Fodder watched everyone else growing taller with pure, intense envy in his eyes. He was still the only infant in the group. I warmly patted his shoulder. Just follow orders and never be a coward. Cowardly goblins never grow tall. Then I got right back to grinding. Over the next few hours, I used the same poisoned fish and lasso trick to defeat 7 more horned crocodiles. I massively leveled up 3 whole times, straight to level 6. Every single attribute point went straight into vitality, pushing it from 5 up to 8. My height hit 1.4 meters, almost looking like a human teenager. My diners hit 710, totally enough to maintain my troops for a long time without worrying. The awesome loot was even better. My warehouse now held 8 crocodile hides, 3 crocodile horns, and 2 crocodile tendons. The horns were tiny, basically thumb-sized. The system explained crocodiles used them to actively sense magic currents in the water, some crazy unique organ that specifically evolved in this wild world. Amazing for crafting. Trust me, you'll love it. Stick with me. These monster parts were pure gold. I saved them up. Those tendons? Perfect natural bowstrings. I ordered the crew to hunt down straight, sturdy branches. They returned carrying massive piles. I chose the 2 best pieces, tough but bendy. Then I carved notches using my fingernails, which grew super sharp thanks to my massive vitality upgrades. They were basically tiny blades. Now, I tied those tendons between the cuts. 2 simple bows, crafted. Time for a quick test. The tension felt decent, but pulling it back fully would definitely snap the wood. Honestly, good enough for right now. Next step, I made everyone collect thin, straight twigs. Selecting the finest ones, I peeled off the bark with my claws and roasted them to dry out all moisture. As the water vanished, the wood naturally straightened. I just kept spinning the wood constantly. Then I charred the tips perfectly black and ground them sharp against a rock. Burn, scrape. Repeat 2 or 3 times. 1 ugly arrow finished. The 3 little goblins had been staring at every step with massive, fascinated eyes. I knocked an arrow, pulled the bow back, and fired 20 meters across the clearing. They completely lost their tiny minds. Oh, wow, wow, wow. 3 absolute goofballs. I walked over and yanked the arrow out of the dirt. The range was totally pathetic. The impact was an absolute joke. But this was the startup phase. Having any ranged attacks at all was a luxury. Besides, I had those red poison berries. Smear some juice onto every arrowhead, and all I needed was to break the skin. 1 tiny scratch, and the target was completely finished. Copy what I just did. 20 arrows each. Move. There is meat for whoever finishes. They scattered instantly, grabbing materials, crouching around the fire, peeling bark, and charring tips. That promise of meat made them work like little machines. While they crafted, I wove 2 simple quivers out of vines. Then I pulled 5 kilograms of monster meat from inventory, slicing it into thin strips with my claws. No knife, just fingernails. Living without proper tools was totally driving me crazy. I needed blades, real ones. Without them, I'd not do anything efficiently. I skewered those meat strips onto sticks and set them by the fire. The exact moment the monster meat started cooking, an absolutely incredible smell filled the air. Way richer than regular meat, even without any seasoning. It must be the magic energy inside. Those goblins were drooling, but they still kept working. They knew I wouldn't let them eat until they fully finished. I was honestly proud today. Watch closely now. I planned to feed them once those arrows finished. But suddenly, sharp crack echoed from the nearby bushes. A branch violently snapping. My long ears shot straight up. Everyone up. Weapons. The three quickly grabbed spears and lined up right beside me. I knocked a poison-tipped arrow, aiming at those bushes. The air went totally tense. The leaves rustled. Something was pushing its way through. A green head popped out of the brush. A goblin. We all finally relaxed, seeing it was just a regular goblin from our very own tribe. But then he spotted the meat roasting by the fire, and his eyes went completely wild. He lunged straight for it without saying a word. I kicked him so incredibly hard he flew backward into the bushes. At 1.4 meters tall, I was way stronger than any regular goblin. Now, he crumpled on the ground, couldn't even stand. Then more rustling. 20-some more goblins pushed straight through the brush. An entire hunting party. The area was suddenly packed with green bodies, all staring at my roasting meat with wild, hungry eyes. I stepped back, lining up with my 3 soldiers, gripping our weapons. Their leader stepped straight to the front. He had this massive scar across his face from surviving a vicious wolf attack. Apparently, that was impressive enough to make him the hunting party boss. Everyone called him Scarface. He stared at the meat, licked his lips hungrily, then looked at me suspiciously. I was way taller than any regular goblin besides the chief, which confused him. But hunger won over caution. "Give me that meat," he snarled, "or I'll have you completely destroyed." Classic goblin diplomacy. I just smiled. "Sure, have some. But how about you all join my crew instead?" Scarface's ugly face instantly twisted with pure rage. "I know what you're thinking. Bold move, right?" He mocked my small crew. "Do you really have more fighters, though?" I looked past him and raised my voice. "Brothers, how about joining me? I'm bigger and stronger than Scarface. I can catch bigger prey. Serve under me, and you eat every day. Anyone who agrees right now, grab some meat." Ding. Spend 210 diners to recruit 21 goblins. You can recruit 16. 21 out of 22 goblins completely agreed. The only single holdout was Scarface himself. He refused to give up his tiny scrap of power. My roster only had room for 16 more, so I confirmed and paid. Troop count 20 out of 20, maxed out. Scarface hadn't even noticed what just happened. He screamed at his goblins to attack me. 4 of them charged, the ones I hadn't recruited. They ran forward without looking back, totally assuming the entire group was right behind them. My soldiers met them with sharp spears, dropping all for instantly. Scarface roared out again. "Attack, all of you." His former troops looked at each other, then calmly walked over to my side and stood with me. Scarface's jaw completely dropped. "You and I love instant karma." His army switched sides. I pointed. "Get him." 19 goblins swarmed him. "All right, you and I are jumping into absolute madness." My guys swarmed him, kicking him around like a soccer ball until I said stop. I casually stepped on his completely wrecked face and raised my spear high. He coughed up broken teeth, yelling, "You cannot take me out. I am the chief's hunting leader." I honestly didn't care. "You are growing way too tall," he wheezed, glaring with absolute hate. "You are turning into a big goblin. The boss will never allow it. He will eliminate you. You will fall." That made me pause, just thinking, definitely not hesitating. I thrust my spear down twice, fast and hard. He stopped, squirming completely. System alert, sweet experience points gained. I wiped the red mess off my weapon, pondering his final warning. So, the boss eliminated any single goblin that dared to grow taller. That honestly explains so much. We had over 300 grown goblins here, but only one massive boss running the entire show. The odds were crazy low. He was squashing every potential rival before they could ever dare to challenge him. It actually made perfect sense in our twisted society. Every goblin is practically born with absolute rebellion deep inside them. Becoming a big goblin meant instantly trying to overthrow the leader. So, that oversized boss crushed them early on. But doing that completely trapped the tribe, stopping any real future development. 0 strong warriors, absolutely no growth, no progress. He didn't care. For 2 straight weeks, I just watched him eat and nap. He never left the base. Every single tribe member was totally starving, while he sat there looking unbelievably huge. The only reason everyone stayed put? Weak little guys instinctively flock around the toughest boss they can find. Now, I hit 1.4 meters, making me visibly bigger than every other guy around. The second that boss spotted me, he wanted me gone. I glanced at my 19 soldiers holding spears, perfectly lined up, and fiercely loyal. You were probably thinking the same thing I did. With 19 fiercely loyal guys, what chance did that oversized boss actually have? I maxed my squad at 20 soldiers and planned to strike tonight. Take him out before he gets me. But first things first, a massive feast. I pulled out beast meat and grains, wrapping it up nicely, and fed my squad until they were completely full. Next up, I made them grab straight sticks and harden the pointy ends right in the campfire, crafting solid wooden weapons. I tossed a bow to a wide-shouldered guy, instantly named him Goblin Bow, and quickly walked him through the absolute basics. His accuracy was absolute garbage, but at 20 meters, just point and loose. I ran my spear crew through a very fast combat drill. Nothing too complicated, literally just thrust the pointy end forward. Thanks to the system making them fight, that was perfectly fine. Goblin Big returned, hauling a massive bag of toxic red berries. We were totally set. Fed the squad round 2, then ordered them to rest up. They crashed immediately. Guys eating 2 whole meals in a single day? They probably thought they had reached pure goblin paradise. Past midnight, I woke the crew. The entire camp was completely out cold. Flawless timing right here. I kept the master plan entirely secret. If they realized we were actually targeting the boss, they would totally freak out and mess up. Better to just march them blind, relying on the system to force our charge before panic set in. We sneaked quietly through the shadows. Night vision made moving around super easy. Right at the edge, I made them crush those berries and coat every single weapon tip with toxic juice. I inspected every weapon myself. Then I went ahead alone to scout the area. The camp was looking exactly like I predicted. Bodies sprawled everywhere, totally asleep. 0 guards on duty. That massive boss was snoring like a literal thunderstorm inside his little hut. You and I both know the time for waiting is over. His squad vanished hours ago, entirely unnoticed. I highlighted all units on my command screen and hit that charge button. Instantly, my crew marched forward like puppets pulled by invisible strings. They full-on sprinted into the base, weapons raised high, making a direct line for the leader's tent. Crashing through the entrance, they fully surrounded the sleeping giant. I was grinning so hard, already planning our 5-year development strategy. But then, absolute silence. They just stood there staring blankly. What is going on? Attack! I completely forgot one massively critical detail. Inside my system's rules, this guy was not flagged as hostile yet. My troops were totally conditioned to always follow his lead. They simply refused to strike a friendly target alone. Suddenly, the loud snoring completely stopped. His eyes snapped open, spotting 20 armed guys circling his bed, and he screamed, jumping right up. What are you all doing? How dare you enter my BAM? I sneaked behind and shot an arrow right into his back. Then another. Take him down. Once I attacked, the system finally labeled him as an enemy. All hesitation vanished instantly. 19 spears thrusted inward from absolutely every direction. The giant roared in pure pain and fury. Then he yanked something out from his animal skin belt. An axe. A solid iron axe. I never expected real forged metal in this basic camp. He wildly swung it, completely taking out my closest soldier with one devastating hit. My stomach sank, but I stayed firm. 1 iron weapon versus 19 fearless fighters. Numbers always win. The massive boss went completely berserk, swinging everywhere. He wiped out 3, then 4 of my guys. Every single strike was an instant knockout. So what do you and I take from this? Pure loyalty. Despite his crazy strength, my guys never flinched. They just kept pushing forward. Stick with me here. The system completely froze them in place. Normally, goblins just run when danger strikes. That was their nature, but these brave guys kept charging forward, stepping past fallen friends to thrust spears at him. It was totally unnatural. He could not understand it, screaming at the entire tribe to help defeat these rebellious traitors. The sleepy goblins around the camp woke up, staring in absolute shock. Their almighty leader was covered in scratches, getting poked constantly by his own people. Their tiny brains could not process this crazy rebellion at all. He screamed out again. Some started moving toward us. I had to end this super fast. Finding an awesome opening, I charged right in, driving my spear deep into his belly. He glared down at me, eyes red with absolute fury. You are a big goblin now. He finally understood. A goblin growing tall enough to challenge him? Totally normal cycle. What was not normal at all were fearless soldiers who never feared falling. I twisted my spear, totally draining his energy. He let out the absolute loudest scream of the night, dropping his heavy axe. Throwing all my weight forward, I finally toppled him. He hit the ground just like a massive collapsing mountain. Dust went flying everywhere. His thick layers rippled. That padding was the only reason he survived this long against 20 sharp spears. My loyal soldiers quickly swarmed him. Spears rose and fell, landing dozens of strikes. They were not quite strong enough for finishing strikes, but the magic potion on every tip did its work. His face went pale. Movements slowed. Now watch this part closely. He looked up, whispering for mercy. I glanced back at the goblins, who were creeping forward to help their former chief. They completely froze. The second he begged for mercy, he stopped being the strong, fearless leader they always respected. Now, they just stood there staring at each other, incredibly confused. I told my soldiers to stop attacking. I had him tied tightly with rope, then picked up his iron axe, examining it closely. Just a regular old axe, rusty from neglect, blade completely dull, but it was iron. And that actually mattered. I pressed the axe against his neck. Where did you get this? His eyes darted around frantically. Promise you will not destroy me, and I will explain everything. I grabbed the spear stuck in his side and twisted. He squealed loudly. I will talk. I stole it from a human village for days west of here, right along the rushing river. That stopped me completely cold. Humans in this forest? I squeezed every single detail out of him. The village was small. He held up 3 fingers, saying, it would take 3 of their human villages to equal our tribe's size. So roughly 100 people lived there. He had attacked them once, and got beaten totally badly. This axe was all he managed to steal. I asked if 4 days west meant the forest edge. This detail was critical. If we were that close to human civilization, I needed to move the tribe deeper into the dense woods immediately. Every single fantasy story I read in my past life told me the same thing. Goblins were just basic starter enemies for human armies and adventurers. And since goblins in this strange world caused so much trouble stealing from everyone, humans would absolutely defeat us on sight. Zero negotiation. Absolutely no mercy. He said the actual forest border was much farther than 4 days. The forest was totally enormous. Distance from humans meant pure safety. I know what you are thinking, but I was already plotting to raid that human village for iron tools. I am a goblin now, and I will think like one. Pure survival comes first. I asked exactly why humans would build a village inside a monster-filled forest. He honestly did not know. I wondered if they were sneaky exiles banished from mainstream human society. Then I got him to tell me everything about the surrounding area. There were lots of other goblin tribes scattered through the forest, all primitive and small. Ours was actually one of the larger ones. To the east lived kobolds, dog-headed humanoids covered in thick fur, about 1.4 to 1.6 meters tall, stronger than goblins, but fewer in number. He fought them several times. Neither side could wipe out the other, so they established a strict border at a massive tree. West of that tree was pure goblin hunting ground. East was cobalt territory. To the south was a huge mountain riddled with caves, home to massive cave spiders, dangerous monsters that spat silk and sprayed venom. Every goblin sent there had never, ever returned. That was the complete picture of our wild neighborhood. The defeated chief told me his own story too. He had been a regular goblin in another tribe, until a giant forest bear destroyed it. He escaped, wandered totally alone, grew huge, and eventually found this exact tribe. Weaker goblins gathered around him over time. The tribe grew, and he got comfortable, stopped exploring, and stopped doing absolutely anything. He just ate and slept for who knows how long. I heard enough. I put the heavy axe to his neck. Nothing left to say. Time to go. He shook violently. No, I told you absolutely everything. You cannot finish me. I quickly checked the prisoner panel. His icon showed recruitable. He truly submitted, totally willing to serve me just to survive. I didn't recruit him. I swung the axe and banished him forever. He ruled this tribe way too long. So what do you and I learn from this? If I kept him around, I would never have full control. His presence would always undermine my epic new rule. Stick with me. I kicked the defeated boss into the crowd. They shrieked, stumbling backward. Walking to the center, I stepped on the fallen leader, smiling at 300 terrified faces. I am the absolute boss now. Who agrees? Who disagrees? Next morning, the sun rose on a brand new tribe. I was in charge. Tallest, strongest, undisputed. Time to fix this absolute mess. First thing I did was organize everyone. Half became hunting squads. 5 groups of 30 sent everywhere to find prey. I made one rule crystal clear. All catches must come back to me for fair distribution. Anyone hiding food would severely regret it. The other half became the main work crew. Their first job, digging graves. Over 30 goblins perished from red berry poisoning 2 days ago, and their remains were still lying around the camp, just rotting. The old chief literally did nothing. Goblins are tough, like cockroaches, but a plague from those decomposing remains could easily wipe out the entire tribe. I recruited 7 new soldiers to replace yesterday's losses, then took my 19 troops right back to the river to hunt crocodiles. I went completely beast mode. Then, 21 horn crocodiles eliminated using that poison fish method. My level shot from 6 to 10. Vitality climbed from 8 to 12. I hit 1.8 meters. Huge, even for a massive goblin. I maxed my running skill at level 5. Then started dumping points into one-handed weapons since I finally had a real iron axe to train with. By evening, I had everyone flip the crocodile remains, using my new axe to slash open their soft underbellies. I peeled off every hide, collecting every single horn. With tools, nothing went to waste. The daily haul: 42 grain units, 37 hides, 5 horns, 11 tendons, and 1,890 diners. But watch closely now. Could we safely eat this meat? These crocodiles were poisoned. Those red berries were insanely toxic, maybe even magical. I could not just feed raw, poisoned meat to my tribe. I remembered a past life documentary saying that many natural toxins break down under extreme high heat. Worth testing. I took a piece of crocodile meat, washed it thoroughly, and roasted it until it became bone dry, jerky, so tough you could barely even chew it. Then I called over Goblin Big. You were brave today. Here is a reward. He beamed and wolfed it down. I watched him like a hawk. Feel anything weird? He scratched his face, thinking about it. No, wait. Oh yes. My heart jumped. Boss, I'm still hungry. I rolled my eyes, letting everyone eat. If they perished, I would recruit replacements. If they survived, we hit the absolute jackpot. An hour passed. Not a single goblin showed any poisoning signs. The toxin was either inside the guts or destroyed by heat. Either way, thousands of kilograms of meat were perfectly safe to eat. Now, I sent Goblin Spear running back to bring the entire work crew. When they arrived, seeing that huge mountain of crocodile remains, their jaws literally dropped. Each crocodile weighed over 500 kilograms, at least 300 kilos of usable meat each. Way more food than anyone had seen in their lives. We hauled everything back to camp. You and I know what comes next. I built a massive bonfire, setting up a processing line. Wash meat at the spring, slice it thin, bring it back, and roast it into jerky. Nobody was allowed to eat raw meat. Work hard, and tonight everyone eats until they are full. The goblins went absolutely wild with excitement, working faster than I had ever seen. Soon, thousands of meat strips hung around our bonfire, filling the air with the absolute richest smell this tribe had ever known. As darkness fell, the hunting squads returned one by one, completely staring at the mountains of food in disbelief. They spent all day chasing rabbits and picking berries. Coming home, finding the camp overflowing with meat, I lined up each squad, inspecting their daily hauls. The first group brought back some rabbits and berries. Modest, but very honest work. I nodded approvingly. Then I leaned in, sniffing each of them carefully. They had absolutely no idea why I was smelling them. I slapped the squad leader across his face. When was the last time you bathed? You all stink. Go wash at the spring. Scrub until the smell is gone, or no meat for you. His face completely lit up at the word meat, and he sprinted off with his whole squad to bathe. Hygiene through bribery, whatever worked best. The second and third squads were similar. Small game, honest effort. I smelled them, sent them to wash, letting them eat. Then the fourth squad stepped up. Their haul was completely pathetic. A handful of berries and some bugs. Barely anything. The squad leader grinned at me eagerly, clearly already thinking about bath time and meat. I leaned in, sniffing him. Strong, fresh red stains covered him completely. I grabbed his throat, slamming him to the dirt. I told you, all prey comes back to me for distribution. You ate it out there, did you not? Trying to be clever with me? I squeezed the squad leader's throat until his eyes practically bulged. I smelled fresh raw prey all over him. His team caught something, hid in the forest, coming back with almost nothing, thinking I would not notice. So what do we learn here? Goblins have absolutely zero morals, loyalty, or conscience. Stick with me. We are about to watch this system completely flip. The only thing keeping them in line right now? Pure, undeniable fear. I refuse to let him explain. Pulling my heavy axe, I finished him instantly right there. Then, pointed the massive weapon straight at the rest of his squad. Soldiers, eliminate every third target. My spearmen surrounded them immediately. The hunting squad totally collapsed in pure terror, but my soldiers looked confused. They just did not understand every third one. I held up 3 fingers. This represents 3 goblins. I folded one finger down. Take out one of 3. They understood and began striking fast. Loud cries filled our camp. The huge problem? These idiots could not count. Before I even noticed, they had eliminated way more than a third. The squad dropped to under 10 members. I halted them super fast, but the massive damage was done. I could not take it back without looking totally weak, so I rolled with it. Pointing at the fallen, I roared at the entire tribe. This is exactly what happens when you disobey. Follow orders, and you eat meat daily. Break my rules, you vanish. The last hunting squad was led by a goblin with just 1 ear. When he saw me walking straight toward him, he dropped to his knees instantly. Did you eat the captured prey? He shook his head frantically. Honestly, very good. Just follow the rules and you have absolutely nothing to worry about. His squad's haul was actually decent. Rabbits, wild chickens, bird eggs, berries, plus odd-looking fruits. No foul smell on anyone. I was deeply satisfied. Then I spotted something, making my heart completely stop. A potato. I snatched it up. Looked like a real potato. Now, pay close attention here. This discovery is huge. I scratched the skin, sniffing it. Smelled like a potato. Bit it. Chewed. Tasted like a potato. Where did you find this? I grabbed one ear, shaking him like a literal ragdoll. Near the cave spider territory. There are tons of them. The whole mountainside is covered. I could barely even breathe. Potatoes. Massive starch content. Grows literally anywhere. Insane crop yields. This single epic discovery could change absolutely everything forever. I promoted one ear to permanent squad captain with double food rations, sending his team to wash and eat all the jerky they could want. Then I used this perfect moment to announce a reward system in front of everyone. I held up pieces of meat jerky, laying them out in visible piles. Work crew members get 1 piece daily, hunters get 1.5, danger pay, squad leaders get 2 pieces, combat soldiers get 3, and anyone accomplishing something truly special, like one ear finding those incredible potatoes, gets 10 pieces at once. Goblins absolutely could not do math, so I simply stacked jerky into visible piles. Their eyes totally locked onto that tower of 10 strips. The message landed. Do something useful, like absolute kings. Soon, the entire tribe completely transformed. I built secure animal pens for the wood rats, big, docile rodents eating absolutely anything, breeding constantly. The old chief just tied them to random trees. I organized proper breeding protocols, and from now on, only those earning true merit would be allowed to breed. Next, I built a nursery, a wooden shelter with a crude, heated platform inside. You and I both know survival here is rough. Back then, 80% of goblin babies did not survive because nobody cared for them. That was not compassion driving me at all. Pure math. Population meant real power. Protecting youth meant more soldiers down the line. I built myself a sturdy wooden house, 40 square meters, proper walls, a real roof. While everyone else slept on bare ground, I had personal quarters. Maybe it looked like corruption, but I was leading, carrying the massive weight of this entire tribe's future. A leader needs his rest. Things were genuinely improving, but one problem kept holding us back. Zero iron. Without metal tools, absolutely everything took forever. We were stuck in the Stone Age. One single rusty axe was not going to build a civilization. Standing right at my cabin door, I looked out west toward the human village the old chief had mentioned for days along the river. Time to pay them a serious visit. I was going to raid that human village. Absolutely zero guilt. Different world, different species, totally different rules. But my current army was garbage. Serious preparation was needed first. Step 1: massive recruitment. On top of my 19 system soldiers, I drafted 200 goblins into military service. Every single one of them got a wooden spear, starting their training. The drills were basic spear thrusting for combat, running for mobility, and standing at attention for absolute obedience. The first two went perfectly fine. Bribe them with food, and goblins would strike and sprint all day. But standing still? Absolute disaster. Goblins are literally born chaotic. 5 minutes into formation, they started fidgeting, whispering, and eventually just sitting down. I tried strict corrections. I tried harsh punishments. Nothing worked. Their wild instincts fought discipline like oil against water. So, I went nuclear. I lined up my elite system spearmen in front of the goblin formation. Watch them. If anyone moves, speaks, or steps out of line, eliminate them. That did it. Facing sharp spear tips held by soldiers absolutely ready to act. Every goblin stood totally frozen for 3 hours straight. Not a twitch or whisper. Fear was their only true language. Trust me, in just 1 month, I would have their obedience totally hardwired. You and I are about to watch my squad level up. I needed my 19 soldiers upgraded into big goblins. Level 2 units, totally massive and super strong. Sending basic goblins against humans? That is basically tossing kids at grown adults. I spent 2 solid days farming crocodiles by the river. Finally, Goblin Spear had enough experience points. I paid 80 diners and upgraded him. His body transformed instantly, shooting right up to 1.7 meters. He stared at his hands in shock, feeling that epic raw power flowing. I dragged him out in front of the entire tribe and shouted. Goblin Spear fought super bravely, so I granted him power. He is our second big goblin now. Want this? Fight hard. Ding. Successful speech unlocked. Charisma level 1. The goblins went absolutely wild. Over the next few days, those river crocodiles got totally swept away. One by one, my soldiers hit their experience caps, and I upgraded them all into big goblins. Step 3. Equipment and armor. First, I had tons of crocodile hide ready. The back skin was way too thick. My axe could not even scratch it. I desperately need iron chisels and punching tools for that. So, I used the softer belly leather instead. Still amazing protection. It could stop light arrows and easily deflect any sword strikes. I demonstrated the whole design. Cut 2 panels for the front and back. Then tie them together with rope. Add shoulder pieces, a skirt section, leg guards, and arm guards. Simple but highly effective. I ordered 20 sets made right away. I even built a double-layered version. 2 sheets of belly leather stitched together for extra heavy chest protection. Then I grabbed a crocodile skull, split the upper and lower jaws wide apart, and wore it as a helmet. From a distance, I looked like an epic crocodile warrior. The other big goblins absolutely loved this awesome idea. Now watch closely. They borrowed my axe and made skull helmets too. 19 crocodile-headed soldiers standing in strict formation. We looked like a complete monster army. This would easily terrify any enemy who saw us coming. The system recognized the armor set and gave stats. This enhanced version boasted solid protection numbers across every body part, and light magic resistance. It gave water element affinity, and a hilarious bonus. Crocodiles would mistake the wearer for one of their own and hold back. Wearing their own kind totally confuses them. If belly leather was this amazing, armor made from those nearly impenetrable back plates would be completely unbelievable. Just another reason to raid humans for better tools. Step 4. Epic ranged weapons. I had plenty of crocodile tendons, making perfect bowstrings. With the right frame, I could build crossbows, and the timing was literally perfect. All this busy crafting had pushed my smithing proficiency straight to 25. That is enough to finally unlock my first skill branch. A choice between 2 specializations. Everything was finally coming together. Hitting smithing level 25 was enough to unlock my very first specialization. 2 choices: pottery or bow and crossbow crafting. Pottery was tempting. It is a cornerstone of civilization. But a huge fight was coming. I needed weapons, not flower pots. Besides, I already knew basic pottery from my past life. You guessed it, I chose crossbows. Instantly, pure crafting knowledge flooded into my brain. Construction techniques, materials, mechanisms, everything a master crossbow maker would ever need. Looking at those 2 sad wooden bows I had made before, I physically cringed. I just smashed them both right on the spot. Goblin Bow stared at me like I ruined his favorite toy. Stop pouting, buddy. I'm building you something way more epic. I dragged him into the forest to find pine nut wood. My new knowledge confirmed this tree has the perfect combination of strength and flexibility for epic crossbow construction. We found one, chopped it down, stripped the bark, and sliced it into perfectly workable pieces. I chose a simple cross-shaped design. 2 wooden pieces joined together, a basic wooden trigger mechanism, absolutely nothing fancy. I finished the first crossbow in 1 day and tested it out. Range, over 120 meters. Even with basic wooden bolts, shots punched deep right into tree trunks. In a primitive weapon world, this was basically a budget handgun. The system sadly rated it extremely crude. No curing, no finish, and a trigger that might break under heavy use. Fair enough. But it worked, and that is what mattered. I cranked out 20 crossbows over the next few days. Literally 3 per day. Production was painfully slow, with just 1 axe for the whole tribe. But hey, at least the repetitive work kept pushing my smithing proficiency way higher. For bolts, I had goblins use crocodile teeth as arrowheads. 40 bolts per soldier. Quivers were neatly stitched right from our crocodile leather. A full month of epic preparation later, my squad was ready. My 20 big goblins wore crocodile leather armor, skull helmets, and carried both spears and crossbows. Behind them stood 200 regular goblins in strict formation. They trained for a month in basic drills, armed with wooden spears and throwing stones. Total cannon fodder, but completely disciplined cannon fodder. Before heading out, I called one ear over, making him acting chief. He looked totally crushed. Boss, please take me with you. I want combat. Merit. I patted his shoulder. Running the tribe counts as merit. So, are you and I ready for what comes next? Let's dive into this wild journey. Pointing at my wooden cabin, I gave 3 strict rules. Take down anyone who tries, I ordered, getting frantic nods. This cabin rule, a total loyalty test. I needed to know if my boss status held up while absent. If my goblins respected the line, awesome. If not, I'd return and harshly punish the rule breakers. Either way, I'd gather solid intel. Task 2. Expand the squad. You have 70 goblins and 30 wood rats. Each rat gives us 3 little goblins. 2 weeks to arrive, 2 weeks to grow. By the time I return, this tribe's population better be totally doubled up. Wonder's eyes completely widened. This wasn't work. This was a massive reward. For goblins, expanding was pure instinct. Getting a free pass to multiply was an absolute dream. He stared at me with pure, intense, practically religious devotion. Task 3. Farming. Take those discovered potatoes and plant them all. Clear out the surrounding land and get those crops growing. Clueless about farming, I grabbed a spear, loosened up the soil, dug perfectly spaced holes, and cheerfully dropped a potato right into every single one. Super crude, honestly. Would they actually grow? Nobody knew, but I absolutely needed the home squad doing something truly productive. No way. The home crew just parties and chills while my active soldiers fight hard on the front lines. Do your absolute best, deputy. I rallied my awesome army and confidently pointed my axe directly west. Target locked on the human village. My goblin squad marched west along the river. I pushed them, 16 tough hours daily. I really wanted to test their absolute limits. Honestly, these goblins shocked me. With enough snacks and water, they never stopped. I discovered a brilliant trick. Whenever their energy dropped, I passed out. 1 strip of jerky per goblin, never breaking stride. They cheered up instantly and kept marching. The only downside was the absolutely insane food consumption. 6 pieces of jerky per goblin daily, but after stockpiling crocodile snacks all month, we had plenty. We crushed a 4-day trek in just 3. Around noon on that 3rd day, marching along the river, a strange scent suddenly drifted on the wind. Watch closely with me. Campfire smoke in a monster forest. Very few creatures know how to make fire. We arrived. Troops into the forest. Eat, sleep, no talking, no wandering. Anyone disobeying gets completely removed. I cleverly hid the army among the trees, splitting my elite goblins into 2 teams. Goblin Big stayed behind to happily babysit our 200 regular soldiers. I took the rest, sneaking toward the human settlement to scout. Crossbows loaded, ears completely up, eyes wide open. Spot anything, tell me instantly. We moved super quietly. That smoke scent grew much stronger. The ground was literally covered in human tracks. My mount and blade scouting skill translated everything into pure data. 3 people passed 3 days ago. 5 people 2 days ago. For yesterday. Small groups. Definitely hunting parties. We were totally standing in their active zone. Stay sharp. We might bump into them. Pushing forward carefully, my sweet scouting skill suddenly flagged danger hidden in the leaves. Just ahead. Sweeping away the messy debris with my spear, quickly uncovered an iron bear trap. I smartly triggered it with the rock snap, tossing the trap to Goblin Spear. Free iron. We easily found 4 more traps and several tricky snares along the way. My scouting skill safely caught them all. 3 kilometers from camp, the dense forest thinned out. I finally got my first look at the human settlement. We both expected a village, right? My stomach completely sank. How do I handle this? It wasn't a village, it was a castle. Cleared farmland spread out beautifully, with busy human farmers working the fresh soil. Just behind those fields stood a sturdy wooden wall, 3 meters high. Inside was a watchtower, roughly 7 meters tall, with 2 guards up top, chatting completely casually. They carried powerful longbows, classic English style. They wore shiny chainmail, steel helmets, and sharp longswords right at their hips. I wanted to dig up the old chief and scold him. He seriously called this place a small village. This was a strong fortified settlement with thick walls and a garrison. The system totally confirmed it, classified strictly as a castle, not a village. In Mount and Blade, castles easily garrison troops. The walls multiply defensive strength, and you can build cool production facilities inside. Way harder to conquer than an open village. The system simply named it Hardship Fort. I almost laughed. These folks were definitely exiles, banished to the crazy monster forest. At least they kept a great sense of humor about it. Humor wouldn't help me breach those walls. I had zero siege equipment, no ladders, and absolutely no battering ram. My little army could handle an open village, but assaulting a walled castle meant total disaster. I studied the layout a while, couldn't find a good angle, and decided to pull back. I'd wait for nightfall and look for smart opportunities in the dark. Suddenly, pure luck walked straight toward me. The castle gate opened, and 3 people stepped right out. 2 soldiers in chainmail with swords, and a young man wearing fancy green clothes, carrying a longbow and a quiver, with a sword at his hip. He led a hunting dog on a leash. Looked just like a nobleman's son heading out on a hunt. They walked right toward our hiding spot. I signaled a retreat. Trust me, you, and I really want to see what happens next. Stick with me here. The eager hound barked frantically, pulling toward the trees. Victor, sit. A guard smirked. Lord Lance. Victor found a target. The young noble's eyes gleamed brightly, eagerly dropping the leash. That hound launched at us like a rocket. Good thing my trusty axe was ready. The beast burst through the brush, leaping right at my face. I swung my axe, slicing it straight down the middle in one totally epic, heroic strike. The beast fell instantly. Suddenly, the young noble crashed through the trees, totally clueless. Victor, did you catch a prize? He completely froze. 10 pairs of glowing green eyes stared back from the mysterious shadows. I analyzed his fancy outfit, shiny weapons, and highly confident vibe. Definitely a major VIP from that castle, and he just delivered himself to my doorstep. I cleared my axe and heroically charged. Goblins. He grabbed his sword, but my powerful fist connected first. One super-powered punch, and he dropped out cold. Young master. His 2 armored guards drew their swords and charged me. I absolutely wasn't fighting armored knights head-on. I dramatically leaped back and loudly shouted, "Fire!" 9 massive goblins behind me had their heavy crossbows perfectly aimed the whole time. They pulled their triggers, unleashing flying bolts. Both guards shouted as bolts struck them, but amazingly, they stayed standing. They had chainmail over padded armor to whole layers of tough protection. The bolts pierced their armor, but barely left a scratch. Total light damage. Goblin Bao took his sweet time to shoot, aiming carefully like a true pro. Pay close attention here. Realizing the armor blocked everything, he smartly aimed straight for the unprotected face and fired. A perfectly accurate, massive hit. He dropped instantly. I fiercely rushed the second guard while he was still flinching. I slammed his chest, knocking him flat. Before he could even react, I pinned him, tossed his heavy helmet, and brought my awesome axe down. 12 sweet experience points. But that noise echoed. The field farmers looked toward the forest, spotting my goblins taking armor from the fallen guards. They panicked completely and sprinted toward the castle. Watchtower guards spotted our crew, frantically ringing the loud alarm bell. I waited in the trees, excitedly watching to see their very next move. Inside those walls, drama was brewing. I didn't know the details then, but I'd later piece this fun mystery together by questioning the captives. The castle held Hannah, an upbeat magic student, plus an anxious butler named Mont, and Leo the Knight. Surprisingly, that knocked-out kid was their actual lord. A disgraced noble's son exiled far away after a totally failed, highly dramatic political rebellion. Hannah bravely wanted to send an immediate rescue. The strict knight refused. He warned that our giant goblins wielded crossbows, which in this incredible world, were highly restricted military weapons. Only totally official royal armies could use them. Anyone else caught with them faced permanent banishment. Their forces? Totally pathetic. under 10 actual armored soldiers, plus 50 farmers holding simple hoes. The cautious knight argued they absolutely couldn't risk fighting unknown, heavily armed giant goblins. Then he reminded Hannah of the goblins' spooky reputation. They kept captives forever as absolute servants. If her daring rescue mission failed, and she got completely caught, she turned super pale, stopping instantly. Can you believe this? The heavy gates stayed firmly shut. I waited hours, seeing absolutely nothing. Not one warrior stepped outside to save their master. I looked at the snoozing noble. Wow, what a great leader. His own crew wouldn't even save him. I hadn't realized yet that he was their ultimate, highest-ranking boss. They weren't just happily ignoring him. They were completely terrified and totally leaderless. Since they knew we were here, hiding was pointless. I cheerfully grinned at Goblin's spear. Gather, everyone, all 200. Let's do this. I completely looted the noble and defeated guards. The massive haul was epic. We found one gorgeous, fancy longsword, elegant, incredibly sharp, completely beating standard issue. 2 combat swords, plus 1 beautiful jeweled dagger, a beautifully crafted longbow with a 180-meter range and serious stopping power, 2 chainmail sets, steel helmets, 3 padded jackets, and 36 iron-tipped arrows. I eagerly suited up right then and there. Padded jacket first, next the heavy chainmail, then my awesome crocodile leather on top. Shiny helmet secured. The noble's sword, dagger, and bow were mine. Over 30 kilograms of gear, but with my massive 12 vitality points, I barely felt it. 3 layers of armor. The epic security felt incredible. I had become a walking tank. Enough spare gear remained for 1 heavy soldier. I called Goblin. Bow forward. Kneel. He dropped, completely confused. I drew a sword, resting it heroically on his head. Goblin bow, for brilliant battlefield thinking. Landing that perfect face shot when armor blocked our powerful bolts. I award you this chainmail. Epic, right? Come along with me. 1 jacket, a sword, and 1 helmet. He was shaking with pure joy. Totally thrilled. My very first heavy crossbowman, armored enough to hold the line, and armed to strike from afar. The other goblins just stared with pure envy. I pointed right at Goblin's spear. Next, he eagerly stepped forward, literally power sliding on his knees to reach me. I gently placed the second sword on his head. My longest serving soldier, fought crocodiles, fought Scarface, fought the chief. Distinguished service. I reward you. 1 sword, 1 helmet, 1 jacket. He took the gear with pure stars in his eyes. Now for the castle. I tied the unconscious noble to a tall pole, raising him like a massive flag before my army. I hoped the defenders would actually charge out to rescue their lord. They did not even move, just stood watching us. So this kid was really nobody important. They did not even flinch, seeing him strung up, entirely exposed. I figured he was just some rich boy flaunting fancy clothes. Fine. I will test their defenses with a quick probing attack. Everyone, charge. My goblins howled loudly, rushing the walls carrying crude wooden ladders. The defenders simply rained arrows straight down from the ramparts. Now pay attention, you and I are about to see a twist. My troops pushed forward, but a woman started chanting. A glowing magic circle suddenly appeared, and a massive fireball materialized right above it. She hurled it straight down into my charging goblins. The fireball exploded on impact, completely scattering the frontline troops and blasting them entirely away. The ones nearby were knocked completely flat by the massive shockwave. That sound alone was absolutely terrifying, a deafening boom echoing right through the forest. My goblins had never faced anything like this. They lived their entire lives safely inside the quiet woods. An epic explosion of fire and thunder was completely beyond their simple understanding. She launched a second fireball into another group. More goblins blasted away. That massive earth-shaking blast completely broke their morale. The entire force totally panicked, screaming, dropping ladders, and running away. Magic. They actually had a mage in there. Next morning, gathered the scattered troops and counted our losses. 5 down, 14 with light burns, and one guy who twisted his ankle. That was it. The fireballs looked terrifying. Big explosion, loud boom, but the actual impact zone was surprisingly tiny. The flames did not stick to anything, just flashed and vanished like a lighter popping. My goblins only got burns because they were basically naked. If they were wearing basic clothes, they would not have a scratch. I pulled the 14 wounded goblins in front of everyone. These guys took a hit in battle. They absolutely deserve a reward. I pointed at the 20 captured wood rats from our march. You get full breeding rights now. Go! The wounded goblins went wild with pure joy. Get blasted by a fireball and get a reward? Sign me up. The rest of the army started breathing heavily, suddenly super eager to get injured too. But I did not attack again. Not for days. I know what you and I are thinking. Rushing a fire mage without siege gear? Totally foolish. My new plan was way smarter. We starved them out. That protective castle was basically a giant cage. I posted stealthy scouts behind the walls, keeping my main force camped right in front of the main gate. Nobody was getting in or out. Sooner or later, they would run out of food. Meanwhile, I had my goblins build a real settlement. We chopped trees, dug foundations, raised support beams, and easily built proper wooden houses. Not a temporary camp. These were permanent structures meant to last decades. I was planting a second base right outside their front door. I split my forces in two. One group carefully watched the castle around the clock. The other hunted, gathered, and captured more wood rats to breed extra goblins. Days passed. I could see the mood on the walls changing from sudden alarm into deep anxiety. Day 1, they just watched us dig holes. Day 2, we raised the wooden frames. Day 3, the very first house was finished. Then another, and another. We lit communal fires, roasted meat together, distributed food, and perfectly organized portions. Then I did something that truly shook them up. I took a group of goblins straight into their abandoned farmland, and started teaching them how to weed and fully protect the crops. The farmers on the wall nearly choked. Goblins, the mindless monsters from typical adventure stories, were actually learning agriculture. We were not leaving. We were officially moving in. Inside the castle, they were definitely panicking. They had maybe 2 to 3 months of food left, and every day, we grew more settled. Their options were shrinking incredibly fast. They could not attack us, even with all their farmers armed. They would field 70 against our 200 plus. And my 20 armored big goblins with crossbows were worth 3 regular soldiers each. They simply could not run. They were exiles. The 30-day journey back through monster-filled forests took out more than half their people the first time. Even if survivors reached human territory, they would be severely punished for returning from exile. They were completely trapped in every direction. After about a week of this, I decided it was time for some brilliant psychological warfare. So what do you and I make of this? I grabbed the captured noble, tied a rope around him, and walked him to the wall like a dog. Let's dive right into this wild mess. My massive goblin bodyguards raised their wooden shields. Seeing the crowded walls watching us, I gave that rope a massive yank. The fancy noble shrieked, tripped, and planted his face right into the dirt. Crying like a baby, he looked up. Lady Hannah Stoyart Mont Knight Leo, please rescue me. Oh, so this guy actually mattered to them. They all recognized him. Very interesting. This noble guy, Lance, had been my captive for almost a whole week now. Waking up tied to a pole, with goblins staring at him. He just screamed his lungs out in some totally unknown language. Total gibberish to my ears, since questioning him was impossible. Using him as a shiny bargaining chip was my best play. Dragging him like a puppy to the castle wall, I kicked his knees out. He hit the ground, and I pressed my blade right against his throat. He burst into tears instantly. Rescue me. I do not want to end up as goblin lunch. Suddenly, a sharp female voice echoed down from the wall. And wait, I could actually understand her. Translation magic. Gotta be the fire mage. Stop right there, you foul goblin. Show our lord some respect. I blinked in pure shock. Their lord? This wimpy kid ran the show? Oh, he is your boss. I thought he was useless. Thanks for confirming, caught a VIP. Cue my absolute best evil laugh. The woman up high turned totally pale. She just handed me the ultimate leverage for free. After a quick panic up top, a deep male voice spoke through her magic. Looks like the head knight took charge, ordering her to translate his words exactly. Nothing else. Identify yourself. Why invade our lands? I cracked up, laughing. Your lands? Monsters have owned this massive forest since the dawn of time. You humans are the real intruders. Taking you down is just us protecting our home. Now watch this closely, it gets hilarious. I could feel their awkward silence. A goblin lecturing them about property rights? Unheard of. The stubborn knight pushed back. We can hold out until old age takes us. Attacking is useless. I just spat at their wall. Drop the funny act. You traveled far with zero backup. I am betting you only have 2 months of rations left. You will not fade from aging. You will collapse from absolute hunger. That totally rattled him. Guessing their food crisis perfectly? A total critical hit. He fired back. A bluff. Backup is coming next month. The mighty Iron Army will stomp your monster horde. That actually made me freeze. If real backup was coming, I was toast. 50 heavy soldiers would absolutely wreck me. But honestly, I lacked the intel to know the truth. Were these guys banished outlaws or a massive colonization squad? If more human forts were hiding around, I could be the one trapped. But hey, 2 can play that game. Save your garbage lies. You are clearly exiles tossed out by humanity. I have mapped out 100 miles everywhere. There is zero sign of any other human base. You are entirely isolated. I gripped Lance by the throat till he coughed, flashing my absolute scariest, most brutal glare. Listen closely, you humans. Standing before you is the majestic Goblin King, enslaver of races, global terror, Godbreaker, and the sole rightful forest ruler, Arthur Louis Romanovkin. Sure, Huang. You and I both know I faked every single title. Negotiations. Pure professional deception, basically. I stacked so many absurd titles that the mage up top just froze in stunned silence. Throw open those gates and kneel before my might. Surrender now, and I will graciously let you work as my loyal servants. That giant wall stayed totally quiet for an absolute eternity. Finally, the mage spoke up, her confidence completely shattered. Let us talk terms to get Lord Lance back. Boom. Now, we are talking business. I dropped Lance to his knees, wheels turning in my head. This kid was clearly valuable, but exactly how much was he really worth? Between giving everything for him and just shrugging him off, asking for a crazy amount meant they might walk away, leaving me empty-handed. 100 axes and 100 hoes for your lord's freedom. Crickets from the wall. Then her voice fired back, sharp as ice. Absolutely not. Giving iron tools to monsters is completely out of the question. I shoved Lance flat into the dirt. Pretty useless, huh? Your own squad refuses to trade 100 axes to bail you out. Were you a terrible boss? Lance shrieked at the fortress, crying for them to hand over whatever the heck I demanded. Hannah the mage completely blanked him. Extremely smart play. By acting like they did not care, they forced me to lower my asking price. That sneaky knight was definitely coaching her. Words. They countered with 10 grain bags and some shiny glass cup. Do I look like a toddler? A fancy cup for a VIP rescue? What a total joke. Just zero response. I shouted angrily at them. Still absolutely nothing. But then, a brilliant, devious idea sparked. I yanked Lance to his feet, flashing him a very slow, terrifying grin. He completely froze in sheer panic. I signaled my massive goblins to pin him tight and stretch out his right arm. Drawing my sword, I lined up a fake swing. Lance totally lost it. The wall erupted in shouts. Stop. And trust me, you want to see what happens next. Stick with me for this wild mental warfare. Don't hurt Lance. I grinned. Relax. I won't end him. I'll only take his hand, then let him go completely free. Confused silence echoed from the wall. Then I laid out the real master plan. Chop the hand, then release him completely. He'll stroll back inside those fortress walls, only to discover his totally loyal vassals refuse to trade 100 simple axes for his safety. They refused to save him from losing a hand. Let that thought simmer. How absolutely furious would he be? How much would he despise every single one of them? I honestly cannot wait to see his epic payback. That was the psychological twist. This wasn't about a hand. It was the aftermath. A scarred, raging lord returning to punish his betrayers. The knight instantly stammered in panic. Maybe they should hand over the tools. The young master's safety comes first. The old butler agreed quickly. Exactly, our lord's life is paramount. I will personally gather 100 of our oldest, rustiest axes and hoes immediately. Hilarious how fast their minds changed when their own necks were threatened. When Lance was just a captive, they totally did not care. The second I threatened to send him back, raging, they scrambled. The mage woman yelled their total agreement. But how do we guarantee your word? I smacked Lance twice, knocking a tooth right out. Let me make this completely clear. You guys are begging me, not the reverse. Hand over my loot now. Take your useless boss, or I'll send him back missing pieces to devour you all. Instantly, iron tools rained down, 100 axes and hoes. Now watch this epic payoff closely. My goblins grabbed the loot while I booted Lance away laughing and casually strolled into the forest. Lance sprinted for the gate, absolutely sobbing and screaming for entry. The massive door cracked open just enough for him to squeeze inside. Inside, the mage woman hugged him tightly, while he cried on her, looking exactly like a giant oversized lizard clinging to a wall. The knight instantly started stealing credit for the rescue. Meanwhile, the butler wrapped a coat around the freezing lord with a super fake smile. All three comforted him beautifully, playing the absolute perfect picture of loyal retainers welcoming their beloved master home. But behind his back, they totally exchanged incredibly nervous glances. They knew exactly how close they came to extreme punishment for abandonment. Plus, they were already sweating over what he might eventually figure out. I completely ignored their inner drama. I had my 200 iron pieces. The Stone Age was officially over. 200 pieces. I grinned widely. Those humans locked inside could completely rot for all I cared. My only obsession: build, build, build. Big goblins guarded the castle, while everyone else worked. They chopped trees, smashed out stumps, and processed lumber into rapid building materials immediately. Every cleared patch got planted with our home potatoes. With shelters done, tackled charcoal. We dug a pit, packed it with wood, lit it up, and sealed it with mud. Next day, cracked open. Pure black charcoal inside. Using it, I built a kiln and found river clay deposits. Then I shaped epic pots, bowls, and cookware. Pottery is super simple. Mold it. Fire it. If the first batch cracked, I just smashed the failures into powder and mixed them into fresh clay. The success rate skyrocketed dramatically. By sunset, I had amazing cookware lined up, gathering every goblin around. Brothers, starting today, we ditch the nasty era of raw meat and dirty water. We officially enter the glorious age of cooked food. A tiny step for us, but a massive leap for goblin kind. You and I know that's dramatic, right? They looked totally lost, until I commanded them. Fill new clay pots with water and boil fresh meat and veggies. They understood that assignment perfectly. Stew, real, hearty stew. Rabbit, deer, carrots, and onions, simmering perfectly in pots. The aroma was absolutely incredible. From now on, any goblin caught eating raw food gets whipped. Zero exceptions. Nasty parasites had taken out more goblins than enemies. That stops today. Meanwhile, those miserable humans watched us in gloomy silence. We'd been camping out over a month. Our tiny camp had evolved into a real village. Wooden houses, neat streets, and thriving farmland. What takes human lords weeks of planning? My goblins smashed together under a month. And those humans? Seriously suffering. They designed that fortress to resist monster rushes, not full sieges. They never expected us to just chill outside. Their massive problem wasn't even food. They had 3 months of grain left. Their issue was water. No well, and absolutely no spring inside. Their entire survival depended completely on that mage woman conjuring water. She basically became a human fountain. spending every single hour casting spells and waiting for mana to recharge. And that's where we leave it. I could actually see her exhausted dark circles from here. Come along with me, we are diving into a wild story. That morning, the rich smell of our meats drifted up. Their empty stomachs were absolutely roaring. Day after day, the poor old butler had not had a proper bathroom break in weeks. The human soldiers were fading fast, and their lord? The kid I sent back had totally locked himself in his room, refusing to step outside since returning. A complete nervous breakdown. So I sent Goblin Spear right up to the wall. Hey, is translator up there? My boss has a question for you. Henna showed up. What does your leader want? Boss says today is totally historic. Goblins just crossed into a brand new era. He wants to know today's date. It is going straight into the Goblin history books. A long, confused silence followed. Finally, she answered. Year 4352, April 20th. Goblin Spear stood there for several minutes, memorizing those numbers. Then he held up a bag, shaking it proudly. My boss wants to trade one bag of fresh veggies for some writing tools. I could actually see them drooling. They had not tasted a vegetable in ages. Honestly, terrible digestion was destroying their morale faster than my army. They hesitated, making Goblin Spear super impatient. Yes or no? Watch closely now. My boss, the Goblin King and slaver of all races, scourge of the world, destroyer of gods, rightful ruler of the magic forest. Arthur Louis Romang Chin Shi Huang solemnly swears there is no poison in these veggies. Hurry up, I am starving. The old butler tossed down his precious personal writing kit, parchment, quill, ink. They split the vegetables among their leadership. The regular farmers got nothing at all. Leadership really has its perks, huh? Goblin Spear brought the writing set back and ran off to feast. I spread the parchment on the ground, dipped the quill in ink, and eagerly started drawing blueprints for the Goblin Empire's grand future capital. I laid the parchment across my table, sketching roads, drainage ditches, farms, livestock pens, and a commercial zone. Hardship Fort would become the true foundation of a massive city. Those humans picked a fantastic spot. Flat terrain, loose soil, and only 200 meters from the river. Clear out the trees, and you have farmland for miles. Eventually, this could become a booming port. Plus, they already cleared a massive ring of land around their castle. Free cropland, completely ready to plant. Enough food to stop my workforce from hunting. I confidently walked outside, using a spear to draw lines in the dirt. Wherever I drew a square, the goblins dug foundations and built houses. Wherever I drew a straight line, they quickly dug drains. You and I are witnessing history. Fed and equipped, they worked at insane speeds. The first babies arrived. Nearly 200 were born from the forest. I assigned 10 goblins to run the nursery. Warm shelters, plus thick meat and veggie stew daily. With that amazing nutrition, the little ones fully matured in just 10 days instead of the usual 14. Then straight into the workforce. With fresh labor flooding in, I launched my truly massive project. All this construction was pushing my engineering skill way up, approaching 25. The threshold for unlocking a brand new specialization. One of those epic options was cement. I desperately needed those last 2 points. So, I designed a water wheel. First, goblins dug irrigation channels right across the farmland. Then, I had them chop massive amounts of timber and drill holes for sturdy peg joints. When all the wooden pieces were finally ready, I took my biggest goblins down to the rushing river. Fierce crocodiles were everywhere along the shore, but my soldiers were crocodile hide armor. The system's special effect activated. The crocodiles totally thought they were fellow reptiles and ignored them. Construction went perfectly smoothly. We drove incredibly thick wooden beams deep into the riverbed, assembling the mechanism piece by piece. A giant wooden wheel took shape over 15 days of work. Meanwhile, the first goblin babies grew up. Out of 237 born, 218 fully survived. An incredible survival rate compared to the old tribes. 80% failure rate. I added them to work crews immediately. The humans on the wall just watched in stunned silence as the wild forest retreated further every day. More cleared land, more houses, more goblins farming, building, and living organized lives. Then one of their farmers spotted what we were building in the river and shouted in pure disbelief. "A water wheel? They are building a wheel." The mage woman, Hannah, kept shaking her head, constantly muttering, "Impossible. They are just mere goblins." But the wheel absolutely worked. The massive circular frame stood upright in the current, turning steadily. River water rode the paddles up, pouring into elevated wooden channels on support beams stretching 200 meters to our beautiful farmland. The water flowed into a grid of irrigation ditches covering every single field. One of their old farmers stared at our irrigation system, whispering, "With that kind of water management, our crop yields would increase by at least 20%. What do you and I make of this?" A human envious of goblins. Time to celebrate. Let's jump into this. Feed them well. Banish a few troublemakers. And these goblins do whatever I ask. Such simple, funny creatures. My engineering skill just hit 23. 2 more points to go. Looking at that wooden castle, thrilling determination absolutely filled me. 3 waves of little goblins had just arrived. Suddenly, cheerful population exploded to 600. After some strict disciplinary actions, I had 500 eager helpers, 6 times the humans' numbers. Time to claim my mysterious prize. I immediately launched the next grand project, Siege Towers. Splitting my forces into 3 teams, one watched the castle, one chopped trees, while another dug deep foundations. Tall wooden frameworks rose higher and higher, hammered together with clever peg and joint construction. 4 epic towers, one at each corner, built tall enough to peek right over those mysterious castle walls. Now watch this closely. The humans saw everything happening, watching those towers climb day after day, completely helpless. Outnumbered 6 to 1, they were totally stuck. By the time the 3rd generation of goblins grew up, our magnificent towers were perfectly finished. 9 meters tall, way higher than their castle walls and watchtower. I confidently climbed the absolute tallest one with my longbow. A glowing fire brazier sat nearby. I grabbed a special arrow, its tip wrapped in dry grass and tree resin. Holding it over the coals, it quickly caught fire, burning incredibly bright. I looked down at the panicking castle below, playfully drew my bow to its absolute limit, and let it fly. That blazing arrow arched high across 200 meters of sky, magically punching right into a thatched roof. Inside the walls, the grass caught instantly. Within seconds, the entire roof became a brilliant column of flame while alarm bells wildly rang. People scrambled to put it out, but after a month-long siege, they had almost 0 water left to use. They barely stopped the blaze, but that building was toast. Everyone ended up covered in messy soot and total exhaustion. Absolute chaos. That was just one arrow. If all 4 towers fired together, this whole castle would turn into a giant, unlivable roasting oven. I confidently sent Goblin Spear to the wall with my terms. "Is your boss lady around? My chief is kindly giving you a chance to surrender." Hannah appeared, voice shaking slightly. "What exactly are your leader's conditions? We outnumber you 6 to 1. We could turn this place into charcoal whenever we please. Your fate depends on our boss, but he actually likes this castle. He wants you humans as useful helpers. Just surrender peacefully. Become his workers, and skilled people get VIP treatment. Everyone gets to walk away perfectly safe and sound." She quickly translated for the others. The knight nervously asked for guarantees. Goblin Spear scratched his head, trying his best to mimic my style. "Humans, do you surrender or not? Give a straight answer. You feel that tension, right? Boss says if you don't surrender by lunchtime, he fires everything and turns you into roast pork. If you surrender, toss your armor and weapons off that wall. Especially you. Like lady, drop that fancy staff first. Boss wants to see it." Hannah tried negotiating, begging him to promise everyone's absolute safety. Goblin Spear just turned away without another word. "Take it or leave it. I am done talking. Stop acting like I am begging." He genuinely couldn't grasp why I even bothered negotiating. In his simple mind, we should just make a giant, fun barbecue. Time slowly ticked by. From my tall tower, I watched those 3 leaders agonizing over their choice. They imagined the absolute worst about getting captured. Every wild, spooky rumor they had ever heard was running through their heads. I watched the mage woman pick up a dagger, clutching it tightly in despair. She stood there trembling, trying to find her courage. She couldn't do it. She slowly lowered the blade, definitely searching for a far easier way out. Then, right as my deadline hit, and my crossbowmen climbed the towers with their fire arrows, completely ready, the grand castle door slowly opened. It was young Lord Lance. He had been hiding in his room since his release, feeling completely defeated. But now, he stepped out, pale and thin, speaking to his 3 advisors. I couldn't hear from my tower, but I'd learn the truth later. He told them something simple. When his father failed, the king offered a tough choice: permanent banishment to the spooky monster forest. They chose the forest, knowing it was super dangerous, believing even a tiny, sparkling chance of survival was absolutely worth taking. This was the exact same situation. The mysterious enemy held their fate, and surrendering meant maybe living. Refusing meant certain doom. What could possibly be worse than losing everything? The fight instantly drained right out of all of them. Heavy armor started clanking down from the walls. Swords, helmets, and chainmail rained piece by piece onto the dusty ground below. Then a wooden staff tumbled down. I smiled brightly from my tower. Hardship Fort was officially mine. I was just about to light another fun fire arrow and cause more dramatic chaos when loud shouting echoed from the walls. Trust me, this ending is gold. Soldiers stripped off their armor, tossing it down, and even the farmers cheerfully threw their tools. Let's dive in. Watch the mage, Hannah, stroke her staff one last time before finally dropping it. The giant knight painfully wriggled out of his heavy plate armor, tossing it aside piece by piece. Finally, his massive great sword. He gripped it tightly for ages before letting go. Total surrender. I laughed out loud, sending my goblin spearmen to gather the loot. Without weapons, these humans were harmless. The heavy gates slowly creaked open. They shuffled outside. Men walked ahead, sheltering women and children securely in the middle. I counted 73 men, 21 women, and 3 little kids. My goblins eagerly rushed forward with ropes to bind their hands. The humans flinched, but offered 0 resistance against our pointed crossbows and spears. But then, things got incredibly ugly. Some rookie goblins started getting way too handsy with the ladies. Heavy breathing, glowing red eyes, creepy giggles, and yanking clothes. The terrified women shrieked. Hannah furiously shouted at me, "You promised to protect us, you liar." I drew my sword, pointing straight at the offenders, breaking my orders. Eliminate them. My elite goblins instantly moved. A dozen disobedient goblins were instantly wiped out, screaming. The human women were completely terrified, but the harassment stopped cold. I fiercely glared at every goblin. My word is absolute law. What I forbid stays forbidden. My commands must be followed, even if it costs your life. Disobey and you fall. Total silence. Every single goblin nervously stared at the dirt. I sheathed my sword, waving for a fresh group to finish tying them. This time around, not a single hand went where it shouldn't. Hannah stared at me with a completely bewildered expression. Now pay close attention. She was totally confused because I didn't act like other goblins. I acted more like a human. I made someone bring over a wooden chair and casually sat in front of the kneeling crowd. Tell your people to bow before their new boss. Hannah's face instantly twisted with rage, but the knight gently tugged her sleeve, nodding toward the armed goblins heavily surrounding them. She translated. Everyone knelt down. I confidently beckoned to her. "You come here." She nervously clutched her chest and stepped back. I smirked. "What is your name, beautiful mage?" "Hannah." "Hannah Dwanning." "Perfect. From now on, you're my personal translator. When I say 3 meters, you instantly come within 3 meters and await my orders. Refuse, and I start severely punishing your people. Now, 3 meters. She totally froze. standing next to a massive goblin while surrounded by hundreds more. Her skin was absolutely crawling. She couldn't move an inch. I pulled out my crossbow, aiming right at Lance, still kneeling on the ground. She immediately sprinted to my side. I slowly lowered the crossbow and addressed the crowd through her. I am the ultimate Goblin King, master of all races, world, scourge, god destroyer, and sole rightful ruler of this magic forest. Arthur Louis Romang Chin Shi Huang. From this exact moment, you are my slaves, my personal property, my currency. In my kingdom, only the truly valuable survive. The absolute lowest value is manual labor. The highest is knowledge and skill. What I ask next determines your rank. Answer me honestly. Lie, and you will seriously regret it. Who among you knows metalwork, mining, smelting, or blacksmithing? Anyone with these specific skills? Step forward right now. Hannah translated with visible disgust. Slowly, an old man dragged a younger guy forward on their knees. My Lord Goblin, my son, and I are Lord Lance's dedicated blacksmiths. We forge heavy swords and armor, build blast furnaces, and definitely know how to locate iron and coal deposits. You and I know how huge this is. Actual blacksmiths who could smelt iron. I wanted to scream with joy. I pointed and roared. These two are now essential core members of our tribe. Anyone harming them is finished. I untied them myself, standing them up, and moving them aside. I just kept going. One by one, I pulled out every skilled person. A brewer, carpenters, a silk farmer, paper maker, and a leather worker. Lance had personally handpicked these people for his little exile colony. Every single one had a useful trade. I gave each and every one of them the same speech. Work hard and life improves. Then came the completely useless ones. 7 professional soldiers and that big knight. Leo, 1.9 meters of pure muscle. I asked what his skills were. He proudly puffed out his chest. I know exactly how to fight. He actually flexed his muscles like I was gonna make him a general. I just waved my hand dismissively. This huge guy and his 7 soldiers get the lowest rank. Put them on latrine duty and digging ditches. They can't do anything actually useful. And he is just standing there showing off those muscles. Get out of my sight. Right as the humans surrendered, the system happily chimed. Victory. Enemies defeated 7. Prisoners 97. Experience 520. Casualties 18. The loot list was absolutely massive. Sickles, axes, hoes, daggers, swords, padded armor, helmets, and battered chainmail, plus 3,890 diners. Then, the big notification popped up. Hardship Fort now completely belongs to you. Choose your stance. Mercy, plunder, or demolish. Plunder was super tempting. Tons of resources and cash. But it would completely tank the settlement's prosperity rating, which sat at a pathetic 280. I was building a capital here, not just raiding and leaving. I firmly chose Mercy, then renamed the fortress. I typed in Goblin Fort, my first castle, all mine. The castle management screen instantly opened up. So what do we make of this? Garrison capacity, 80 soldiers. I transferred my 19 big goblins inside, then recruited 61 more, spending 400 diners to fill every slot. Castle garrison troops were absolutely flawless. Stick with me here. Tax revenue offset their salaries, and they automatically gained experience points just from standing guard. Leave them be for 2 months. Boom, instant upgrades to big goblins, or better. Plus, they would keep absolute order, stop anyone from running, and defend the fort during my absences. I checked our current buildings. Level 1 barracks, a lumber mill, and a blacksmith shop missing 18 workers. Add level 2 farmland with irrigation buffs, level 1 walls, plus 1 totally empty building slot ready to go. For that empty slot, a training ground. It would pump daily experience straight to the garrison, confirming that instantly zoomed my vision out into a god-tier perspective, overseeing the whole entire settlement. I dragged building icons perfectly, like an epic strategy game. I dropped the training ground onto a flat forest patch. 80 goblin soldiers grabbed tools, clearing the site immediately. Total construction time? 48 days. Building arrow towers pushed my engineering skill to 25. Unlocking 2 brand new awesome choices: a coal or lime kiln. I chose the lime kiln. Limestone was completely vital for future construction and roads. The system pinpointed a valid mountain location roughly 1 kilometer north. Next, I quickly queued up a textile mill, paper mill, and brewery. Afterward, I tackled the massive blacksmith issue. Only 2 of 20 worker slots were active because the system claimed my entire territory lacked any kind of qualified smiths at all. Now watch this genius fix. I brought Hannah to translate for the blacksmith, Iron Oak, and his boy. Handing them 20 goblins, I ordered them to teach metalwork. Instantly, the old man fell straight to his knees. My lord, blacksmithing takes real skill. Even humans struggle with it. Besides, we do not share the same language. Just use your hands. Demonstrate. They might look dumb, but once engaged, these guys learn incredibly fast. I drew my sword, waving it near a clueless goblin who was literally picking his nose with one hand and chewing on dirty fingers with the other. Want one of these? His eyes bulged with pure desire. Yes, please. I immediately shoved him toward the blacksmiths. Then forge it yourself. Better food. 0 combat duty. Just focus and learn. 20 excited goblins instantly mobbed the father and son, chattering wildly in Goblin. The smiths had absolutely no choice but to teach. I repeated this process for the carpenter. 20 goblin apprentices. Then, I assigned 3 goblin guards to every single field farmer. They would learn farming while standing guard. Anyone attempting to escape would be permanently stopped. I melted down most captured swords, since they were too specialized for our current tier. Axes were way better, serving flawlessly for both fighting and building. The knight's custom full plate armor completely failed to fit me, so I melted it down. Kept his greatsword though. Awesome weapon. With my daily work finished, I stretched, glancing back at Hannah. She trailed behind me at maximum distance. 3 meters. She flinched, shuffling closer. I finally studied her properly. Red hair, tall, slender figure, gorgeous face. She was the absolute ultimate fantasy world heroine type. In my past life, I read online forums claiming anime girls naturally smelled like flowers and lacked bodily functions. Well, here was a real-life magical girl standing directly in front of me. I know what you're thinking. My scientific curiosity piqued. Cackling like a villain, grabbed her. Come inside. I pulled her into a wooden cabin, shutting the door. Resigning herself, she closed her eyes, clearly expecting the absolute worst. Extremely tense, yet refusing to fight back. She completely accepted her fate. Just survive at all costs. I leaned in close and took a massive sniff. My entire body froze. I grabbed her wrist, lifted her arm, and shoved my nose near her armpit. Wow, it reeks. I launched myself 3 meters backward, slamming hard against the wall. She was sealed inside thick leather robes and knee-high boots for over a month with 0 water. Every single magical drop conjured went entirely toward keeping everyone alive, not bathing. A full month of sweat, fear, and stress, fermented inside airtight clothes. Plus, my goblin nose was hypersensitive. That concentrated stench of old sweat and heavy leather blasted me like a toxic weapon. I lost half my functioning smell receptors in a single inhale, immediately gagging on the spot. It smelled exactly like my construction buddy's dorm after a brutal summer shift. Sweaty socks and work clothes soaking for 12 straight hours. But honestly, so much worse. Every internet legend about fragrant magical girls was instantly destroyed in one sniff. Pressing myself against the wall, I edged around her and bolted outside. Ma'am, we can talk tomorrow. Please, go wash yourself right now. I slammed the door totally shut. Inside, she screamed in pure humiliation. Ah, being called smelly by a goblin? That is the ultimate insult. But seriously? What could she do? A full month without bathing makes anyone stink. Even a gorgeous mage girl. And that is where we leave it. Sealed in leather with 0 water? Trust me, those anime tropes completely lied. Before dawn the next morning, I'm the castle walls, shouting loudly down into the fortress. 3 meters. My voice echoed wildly throughout the entire settlement. Stick with me right now. Confused humans peeked out. But I kept everyone securely locked inside for super easy management. 1 giant closed gate and 0 escapes. Basically a massive fortress. Minutes later, Hannah came sprinting over. Messy hair, crooked clothes, and some seriously dark circles under her eyes. Getting called before sunrise completely ruined her morning vibe. But hey, she actually thoroughly washed up since yesterday. Even her robes and boots were sparkling clean. I chuckled to myself. Calling her smelly was surprisingly top-tier motivation. Sneaking right up behind her, grabbed her shoulders. She froze completely rigid, probably expecting total, absolute doom. Leaning in close, I whispered her name. She shuddered, ready to resist, until I suddenly asked for magic lessons. She just blinked, completely stunned. Teach a goblin magic? But she finally explained the basic magical rules. Magic is basically ambient energy floating around. To use it, draw power using magical script. Then arrange those symbols into special patterns to cast some epic spells. But wait, first you have to master human language, then ancient Elvish, and finally, the ultimate magical script. They all stack up. Why can't I just skip to magical script? She looked at me like I was totally clueless. Common language comes from Elvish, and ancient Elvish comes from magical script. Now, pay close attention here. Legends claim magical script is the god's language, holding the literal laws of reality. You seriously need a deep understanding of the basics before grabbing those high-tier magical powers. Skipping steps is like building a massive house with 0 foundation. Fair enough. Teach me human language first. She sized me up, totally skeptical. But even without magic, I absolutely needed their language to manage my captives properly. That made her shake with absolute frustration, but she kept quiet. She totally thought I was being incredibly naive. Learning a whole different species language is not like taking a basic high school class. Different biology and totally wild grammar structures make it insanely difficult. But honestly, I was not sweating it. I could just dump stat points into intelligence and instantly skyrocket my magic skills. With the system helping, learning would be a breeze. We started walking around the settlement, pointing at trees, rocks, tools, and buildings. I aggressively demanded the human word for every single thing. My hardcore study energy actually shocked her. Curious, she finally asked what specific kind of magic I wanted to master. Got anything to make crops grow super fast? Or earth spells to dig channels and shape epic stone houses? How about fire magic for smelting iron? Hearing that, she literally leaned backward in pure, absolute shock. Using sacred magic for farming? She asked why I skipped powerful fireballs, lightning swords, mind control, or crazy weather manipulation. My eyes completely sparkled. Magic can change the weather and make it rain on command? You feel that genius too, right? Massive crops. She choked, asking if I was actually serious. I just stared. How is making more food a bad thing? 2 completely different worldviews violently colliding. From her elite attitude, I could easily tell that mages were top-tier VIPs in human society. People learned magic for crazy prestige and power, not for basic, everyday practical farming. Like ancient scholars chasing government titles instead of real knowledge. She honestly thought I was a total, complete barbarian. Meanwhile, I thought she was just some sheltered nerd who never realized feeding people totally beats throwing fancy fireballs. We just stood there silently judging each other. And regarding any romance with Hannah, I had my reasons. She was gorgeous, absolutely, but as a goblin, my natural kids would end up as total soulless little monsters. 0 emotions and absolutely no bond. They would just wait to grow strong and eventually take me down. What kind of terrible family is that? The system actually offered a much better, totally different path. Marrying a female lord through the system guaranteed kids with the permanent 100% approval rating. They would be real loyal allies. upgrading to lead armies or manage cities with the totally normal bond. Sadly, Hannah was just an NPC, not a lord. Her approval rating of me was hilariously in the negatives. Until she liked me, the system blocked any romance. So for now, we keep things strictly super professional. Teach me the language, show me magic, and please keep taking baths. I dove completely into studying. Hannah became my forced full-time tutor. I stubbornly practiced speaking human every single day, stumbling over words like a little kid. Absolute torture. Honestly, the most mind-numbing and boring thing I ever did. That is where we leave it. Studying is pure agony for goblins. But some mysterious feeling kept pushing me forward. Stick with me here. He felt pure danger creeping closer. If he didn't level up fast, he'd become another monster's literal snack. 2 weeks passed, and another massive wave of goblin babies arrived. The population hit 800. He immediately stopped all future breeding. Food pressure was seriously building up. They needed the cleared farmland planted with potatoes. Once those granaries were completely full, they could expand again. Amazingly, goblin and human relations completely stabilized. The humans were totally shocked to discover they weren't being harmed whatsoever. His goblins showed remarkable restraint. Why? Rule breakers were severely punished and permanently displayed to warn the newer generation. But honestly, Goblin Fort wasn't going to see any major breakthroughs anytime soon. So, he decided to head back and check on the original tribe's progress. He wanted human farmers and crop seeds to quickly develop both settlements simultaneously. Never, ever put all your eggs into one single basket. If Goblin Fort completely fell, the original tribe could carry on. He brought 20 big goblins, 300 new generation recruits, plus 20 hardworking human farmers, the blacksmith father, the knight Leo, and all human soldiers, the butler, Lord Lance, Hannah, various seeds, and 100 farming tools. Basically, anyone truly dangerous traveled with him. Only harmless farmers stayed behind. He pulled Goblin Big aside before leaving. You're fully in charge of Goblin Fort while I'm gone. Big panicked entirely. Boss, I cannot handle this. Take me with you. He replied that the 80 system soldiers would absolutely follow his exact orders. If humans try escaping, eliminate them. If new generation goblins cause any trouble, permanently punish every third one. Just keep farming the land he had marked out. Run military drills when possible and firmly hold the fort. He would be back soon. 100 jerky strips as reward. With 80 loyal system soldiers and 800 goblins against unarmed humans. The entire fort was completely safe from anything short of a professional army. Hannah kept looking back as they marched away, really worried about the women left behind. He called them skilled textile workers, high-value assets he would never let anyone harm. She asked if the goblins would truly obey his orders in his absence. As long as nobody runs, nobody gets hurt. Guaranteed. They marched until dusk, then made camp. He called Hannah over to cook dinner, fresh crocodile meat and veggies in a ceramic pot. She replaced him as camp chef. He absolutely wasn't trusting goblin hygiene with his own food. After eating, he crashed by the warm fire on a cloth. Hannah curled up in a corner. Now pay attention here. Hours later, deep in the night, he crouched beside her sleeping face. Her eyes snapped open, finding his green face merely inches away. She almost screamed out. He clamped his hand over her mouth. Quiet. Follow me. He grabbed the knight's great sword, a ridiculous 8-kilogram two-handed monster, and led her to the edge of camp. He posted 4 guard stations around the perimeter, wanting to check if his goblins were actually doing their jobs. The first station? 2 goblins, both fast asleep, right on the cold ground. He completely lost it, slapped them both awake, and roared for the entire camp to assemble. Everyone scrambled out with weapons, totally thinking they were under attack. He angrily pointed at the 2 sleeping sentries. These 2 fell asleep on watch. If enemies had come, they'd all be finished. For violating military discipline, the ultimate sentence. He swung that great sword twice. 2 guards fell permanently. He swept the crimson blade across the crowd. I've explained military discipline countless times. You can choose to ignore it, but if I catch you, this exact thing happens. Right behind him, the knight Leo was silently watching. Even without understanding Goblin language, he recognized exactly what just happened. He quietly muttered to the old butler. He caught 2 sentries sleeping and eliminated them on the spot. Brutal. In our human army, we just give beatings, but this is undeniably effective. The old butler stared at him with deep unease. This goblin is definitely going to become a serious problem. The march was painfully slow. Humans were the main problem. They couldn't handle long marches, constantly stopping to rest, getting sick from bug bites, and complaining about absolutely everything. One person got seriously ill from a venomous bug on day 2. Hannah had to stay right by his side, constantly casting healing spells. Sleeping on the rough ground absolutely wrecked them too. Let's pause a second. The humid forest nights meant by morning, everyone had terrible back pain and damp stomach cramps. He had to order his goblins to build simple wooden beds so the humans could sleep safely off the ground near the campfires. What should have been a simple 2-day trip was barely half done after 3 long days. Then, on that 3rd morning, cresting a hill, he caught a very familiar smell on the wind. Goblins. A huge lot of them, but they were nowhere near the tribe yet. He immediately put the army on alert and pushed through the brush into a clearing. About 100 goblins were scattered across the ground, wounded, exhausted, and totally defeated. Right in the middle was One Ear. One Ear, what are you doing here? The moment he saw him, he burst into tears. He ran over and dropped to his knees, tightly grabbing his legs. Boss, our home is completely gone. Trust me, you're not ready for this. Everything is ruined. What happened? The kobolds attacked us. Stick with me here. While I was gone, One Ear absolutely cooked. He grew the goblin tribe to 500 and kept farming. Everything was perfect until the kobold tribe from the east attacked, bringing something totally unexpected. Massive ogres. 5 absolute giant monsters towering up to 6 meters. Stupid, but practically invincible. Somehow the kobolds got them fighting on their side. The goblins simply never stood a chance. The massive ogres easily smashed through absolutely everything. One Ear barely escaped with 100 survivors, sprinting west to find me. I rubbed my chin. Honestly, losing the old base was not truly devastating. I left absolutely 0 valuable gear behind. I fully planned on rebuilding anyway, but these kobolds flat out invaded my personal territory. Whether for pure payback or strict security, they definitely had to be eliminated. How many kobolds? How many ogres? One Ear shakily held up a single hand. 5 massive ogres. Plus, the kobolds had slightly more numbers than our old tribe. So, 300 to 400 heavily armed kobolds and 5 ogres. I checked my army. 19 big goblins rocking thick crocodile armor, heavy axes, crossbows, and shields. 300 trained goblins, drilled for 2 straight months, totally hardened by intense discipline. 52 packed huge 2-meter iron-tipped spears. The rest carried sickles, axes, and hoes mounted on huge poles. Against basic kobolds, this fierce army would easily slice through them like butter. The real problem was those 3-meter ogres. Hannah appeared at my side, looking totally annoyed as always. I asked her everything she knew about ogres. She explained they were huge, lived 300 to 400 years, and possessed high natural earth magic affinity. Their skin developed stone-like growths that physically hardened with age. They flaunted extreme physical and magical defense, wild regeneration for severed limbs, and absolutely bottomless monster appetites. They stuck together in tight family units of 5 to 7, holding deep bonds between parents, kids, and grandchildren. Any glaring weaknesses? Listen closely. They are slow, dumb, and their family loyalty is highly exploitable. Ruthless mages capture ogre babies while parents hunt, then use the kids as hostages to lure the entire family into massive pit traps and wash them away. It is the standard trick for harvesting earth magic drops. I stared right at her, involuntarily taking 2 steps backward. Human mages kidnapped monster babies to blackmail entire families into ruin? She caught my shocked look and quickly got defensive. Hey, I am just a student. I never did that. Catching baby ogres would absolutely fail for me anyway. If the kobolds controlled these powerful ogres, they probably had the kids held hostage already. That perfectly explains how they made the whole massive family cooperate. So, I desperately needed raw firepower. Ogres packed insane physical and magical defense. My current weapons would literally bounce off them. But then, a completely genius idea finally clicked. A ballista, a huge mounted crossbow firing heavy iron-tipped bolts with enough massive force to pierce through thick ogre hide. I immediately called over Iron Oak, the blacksmith, excitedly describing the absolute beast I wanted him to build. You and I both know about Roman ballistas from my past life. It had a surprisingly simple design. 2 crank wheels that soldiers slowly turned to pull the massive bowstring super taut. It was mostly wood, except for the main string. We spent 30 solid minutes hashing out the specifics, agreed, it completely worked, and started building. Goblins quickly chopped trees while Iron Oak and I carefully carved precision parts, complex gears, and crank mechanisms using basic axes and knives. 4 hours later, the first ballista was done, nearly 2 meters long, and required 8 strong goblins to carry. For the bowstring, braided 5 crocodile tendons together like rope. The pure tension was completely enormous. Our ammunition was kept simple. A sharply carved wooden shaft with an iron spearhead on top. 2 large goblins slowly cranked the heavy loading wheels backward. It took 2 solid minutes to fully draw the string. That realistically meant 1 shot per fight. But, man, what an incredible shot. I aimed at a huge tree so thick 4 people could not wrap their arms around it, then yanked the trigger. The heavy bolt punched completely clean through the solid trunk. The iron head violently exploded out the back, stopping only when the wooden shaft wedged tightly inside. Everyone's jaw literally dropped. At close range, this beast hit harder than a handgun. Against thick ogre hide? Absolutely perfect. It would definitely do the trick. I ordered 5 ballistas built overnight. By dawn, all 5 were fully assembled and perfectly test-fired. Every weapon worked perfectly. We marched toward the old tribe. Slower now because of the heavy ballistas. 2 more days of travel. Reaching the familiar forest edge, the wind carried a brutally thick animal stink. Filthy kobolds. They totally took over our precious hunting grounds like they owned the place. I desperately needed the perfect battlefield. Open ground, perfectly clear sightlines, and 0 trees blocking our heavy ballistas. One ear confidently suggested that wide open area near Cave Spider Mountain where he first found potatoes. That ground was completely covered in low potato vines instead of towering trees, giving massive open sightlines. Perfect. I positioned all 5 ballistas on a tiny hill, aiming directly toward the thick forest edge. Enemy forces running from those trees would be 500 meters away, perfectly inside our range. We carefully covered the ballistas with potato vines, making everyone hide quietly in the undergrowth, invisible from the trees. Trust me, you will love this trap. One ear, go provoke those kobolds and lure them straight here. Stick with me here, this gets wild. His eyes held pure terror. Honestly, fair. Those kobolds tracked his group using insane smell, reducing 200 survivors to barely under 100. He was completely shell-shocked. I pressed my giant sword to his neck. No negotiating. Move. He bolted upright instantly, so I sweetened the deal. Succeed, and you get 100 jerky strips, plus 2 personal wood rats for breeding. Suddenly, his fear completely vanished. Mission totally guaranteed, boss. He vanished into the trees with his goblins. I hid in the potato vines, chewing grass and waiting. The dirt here looked incredibly dark. Behind me, Iron Oak was studying a dark stone filled with colorful specks. His face completely shifted, but I totally missed it back then. Half an hour later, wild noise exploded directly from the forest. Enemy incoming. Stay totally hidden. One ear crashed through the trees, gasping, legs shaking like crazy. He dropped right beside me in the vines. Boss, mission accomplished. They are all approaching. I peeked at the trees. Nothing there. They are waiting for the ogre. That giant walks super slow. Boss, there's only one ogre left, and way fewer kobolds. I asked about the rest. He had no idea. I figured the main kobold army left after taking our turf. They kept a small garrison and one ogre behind. That was definitely enough to bully the scattered goblins. But against me and my 5 heavy ballistae, that was an absolute gift. I ordered one ear to take his team 50 steps up. Visible bait. What? I smacked him. Do it. He lined them up. Now pay close attention. Minutes later, kobolds arrived, led by an ogre, tossing trees aside like simple weeds. 5 meters tall, wielding a giant wooden club. Its skin was totally covered in cracked, stone-like armor. Natural armor that looked completely unbreakable. Behind it swarmed roughly 100 crazy kobolds. Some bare, some in rough animal skins, all holding stone weapons. Totally chaotic, but they had insane numbers. They had officially hit the Stone Age, plus a giant backing them. No wonder they completely crushed One Ear's entire tribe. These kobolds brought a shaman, standing at 1.6 meters tall, totally decked out in bone accessories, skins, and holding a huge cattle bone staff. He stared at One Ear's 100 goblins just standing there on that hill, and literally burst out laughing. To this guy, goblins were just pathetic little bugs. They had zero chance against kobold claws, fangs, and a massive ogre slave. Then, he sniffed the air, an unfamiliar, totally new scent. My human scent. But in this magic forest, sweet-smelling creatures basically just meant weak and totally delicious. He brushed it off, waving his staff forward, wiped them out, turned them into dinner. The kobolds instantly started barking. Someone cracked a nasty thorn whip against the ogre's back. It roared in pure humiliation, but still obeyed, trudging forward with earth-shaking steps. You could see the pure shame written on his face. He wasn't fighting for fun. His own children were held hostage. I watched him lumber closer. 200 meters. 150. Close enough. We both knew this was coming, right? I ripped the vines off, aimed my heavy ballista, and fired. The heavy bolt flew like a missile, punching into his gut. That iron head completely ripped through his stone armor, sinking half a meter deep. The giant unleashed an earth-shaking roar, desperately grabbing the shaft in pure, terrified confusion. Then my other 4 ballistae launched. 2 bolts missed the giant, skewering random kobolds like kebabs. The other 2 landed perfectly, striking his chest and shoulder. The ogre immediately coughed up a huge fountain of crimson. That heavy chest bolt had completely punctured his lung. He crashed down, desperately gasping for air. The kobolds totally panicked. Their invincible giant was heavily wounded. Before they could even process this absolute shock, my big goblins unleashed heavy crossbow fire from the hillside. Then I gave the order, charge, take them all down, grab your glory. 300 screeching goblins erupted directly from the potato vines, aggressively pouring downhill. The steep slope brought massive momentum. Our front line of iron spear goblins crashed into the kobold formation, instantly skewering at least a dozen on first contact. Right behind them followed wild goblins swinging heavy hoes, sickles, and long pelixes. Less deadly, sure, but totally overwhelming in numbers. Missing their giant, outnumbered 3 to 1, and battered by heavy crossbow volleys, the kobold started breaking. Then, the shaman finally moved. Raising his staff, he chanted something truly nasty, jumping around like he was doing a wild ritual dance. 10 seconds later, he violently slammed that staff into the dirt and unleashed a horrific howl. Every kobold hearing it went absolutely berserk, eyes glowing red, breathing turning ragged. They violently launched themselves at our goblins with bare claws and teeth, ripping like rabid animals. Just one frenzied kobold could easily shred a goblin apart in mere seconds. Their line stabilized. Urer's magic. Seriously nasty stuff. That shaman glared up at my hillside spot, noticing our huge goblins cranking the ballista wheels for a reload. He immediately understood the danger. He definitely couldn't let those heavy weapons fire again. He began another ritual much darker, Purple-black energy swirled around his bone staff, shooting straight into the wounded ogre. That's where we leave it, trust me. You're going to want to see what happens next. Stick with me. The ogre's eyes suddenly flooded purple. Whatever fake visions the shaman showed him, his family falling to the tiny green guys on the hill. It absolutely worked. The massive ogre exploded with pure, unstoppable rage. His roar actually shook my chest. Ignoring the arrows stuck inside him, the beast simply stood up and charged directly at my current position. Each footstep shook the earth like drums. Goblins and kobolds alike were completely trampled under his massive feet as he barreled straight through the messy fight. I quickly glanced at the ballistae. My big goblins were cranking them as fast as possible, but they definitely were not going to reload in time. I grabbed my bow and aimed for his eyes. Missed. Fired again. Missed. He was practically right on top of me. I dropped the bow, yanked the greatsword off my back, and firmly planted my feet for impact. The giant swung his massive tree trunk club straight down at my head. I dodged left. The weapon cratered the earth where I stood, spraying dark dirt absolutely everywhere. During his recovery frames, I quickly scrambled up and swung my greatsword with absolutely everything I had, right into his massive waist. I smashed that heavy greatsword into the monster's waist with all my strength. The blade hit like iron striking stone. A horrible screeching sound echoed, leaving nothing but a tiny white scratch on his incredibly tough skin. He instantly swept his heavy club sideways. I easily rolled away. Despite all his terrifying, monstrous power, his actual attacks were super slow and totally telegraphed. I could dodge him all day. I just needed to buy exactly 1 more minute for the ballistae to finish reloading. Now pay attention here. I completely missed the sneaky shaman behind me, who was secretly watching my crews frantically reloading those heavy ballista wheels. Knowing he couldn't let those weapons fire again, the shaman started another creepy ritual. Jumping and chanting, he gathered dark purple energy right on his staff. He pointed the weapon and fired. The dark energy violently slammed into my back. My crocodile armor blocked maybe 30%. The rest totally flooded my body. My eyes turned pitch purple, and I completely froze right there. A wild vision filled my mind. I saw my glorious goblin empire, millions of citizens, massive cities, and huge armies. Everything I built had grown impossibly huge. Then humans, elves, dwarves, and giant dragons attacked from every direction simultaneously. After months of brutal war, my empire totally crumbled. Standing on my capital's highest tower, holding a broken sword, I watched every single race defeat my people. A red dragon flew overhead, bathing me in flames. Helplessness, rage, and total despair. I couldn't move or think. I stood completely paralyzed while the ogre raised his club right over my head. Suddenly, cool blue energy washed through me. The purple fog shattered, my eyes cleared, and the vision vanished. Snapping back to reality, I saw the club descending toward my head. In pure terror, I frantically threw myself out of the way. The club barely grazed my body, cratering the earth inches away. I looked back. "Watch out for his nasty fear magic," Hannah shouted. Fear magic. We both felt that, right? That fake vision felt way too real. My hands were shaking. If Hannah hadn't intervened, I could be totally defeated right now. I quickly repositioned so the sneaky shaman was no longer behind me, easily watching both enemies at once. Ogre in front, shaman in my peripheral vision. 2 more quick dodges. The monster was finally getting sluggish from taking heavy damage. 3 heavy ballista bolts were still stuck in his body, rapidly draining his energy. Then Goblin Bao screamed from behind me, "Boss, ready, get clear." I dove sideways as 5 heavy bolts screamed through the air. From less than 50 meters away, the raw power was absolutely devastating. Every single bolt connected flawlessly, 2 in the chest, 2 in the belly, and 1 clean through his thigh. The ogre let out a sound I'll never ever forget. Not anger, just pure agony. The dark mist in his eyes shattered from the pain. He toppled forward like a falling building, his leg totally destroyed, completely unable to even stand. Done. The biggest threat was completely neutralized. I looked at the melee below, where my goblins were tangled with the kobolds. Big goblins, charge. Defeat the kobolds. Take the shaman with the bone staff alive. My armored elite loudly howled and immediately poured into the fight. With them joining, victory was only a matter of time. I casually walked back to where the humans were hiding and stood right in front of Hannah. She looked up nervously. You totally saved my life. Now, you can ask me for one single thing, as long as it's reasonable. Her eyes totally lit up. She thought for a moment, then held out her hand. Just give me back my staff. I stared at her for a long time. She stared back, heart visibly pounding. I calmly pulled the staff straight from my inventory. She immediately reached for it. I pulled it back. Hannah, with this staff, you won't attack me from behind, will you? She loudly huffed. A noble mage would never stoop to backstabbing. I handed it over. I really hope so, Hannah. You really don't want to find out how I treat traitors. The battle ended incredibly fast. Right after the ogre went down, the kobolds totally burned through their berserker energy, leaving nothing. My goblins quickly surrounded them with spears and long-handled weapons. And then, it was completely over. Victory. 57 FOs down, 21 captured, plus massive experience and diners. That's where we leave it. At level 1113, I dumped my new points straight into intelligence and awesome engineering. Let's dive in. Upgrading was my goal. My running stat hit 28, unlocking a fresh path. 5% movement speed for my squad, or better health. I chose speed. Fast mobility wins battles in absolutely any era. I checked my updated stat sheet. 2 new titles popped up. Ruthless ruler from all those harsh defeats. The goblins feared me. Now, better obedience, fair rewards, and strict rules. They literally dreamed about earning merit overnight. Both super useful buffs. Then I spotted that kobold shaman pinned down by 2 massive goblins, still snarling like a totally wild beast. I grabbed a broken spear shaft and struck him across the head 3 times until his eyes went completely blank. Now watch closely, things get crazy. I opened his prisoner panel and froze. Not a normal unit, but a recruitable companion. I had been stuck on this system quest forever. Recruit just 1 companion to upgrade my clan level from 0 to 1. A higher clan level meant doubling my troop capacity from 20 to 40. Plus, I already had the required reputation. I just needed a special character. Hannah was technically 1 too, but when I asked her to join my squad, she firmly rejected me. Since I hoped to eventually win her over through the system marriage mechanic, I simply let that issue slide. This dog-faced wizard, though, had 0 concerns. Tell him to join my army, I said. Hannah naturally translated. The shaman started barking insults. Noble kobolds would never bow to filthy goblins. He called us mere snacks. Their chief would end us. Hannah giggled. Wild, right?